Chapter 1240. It was an expanse of ruins, and it was covered in ruins and a scene of desolation. It seemed like a world-shocking battle had occurred here a very long time ago, and it had transformed this place into ruins that existed until now. At this moment, a black palace stood towering above these ruins, and it was covered in a faint, boundless aura. It wasn't tall, yet it emanated a boundlessly vast, imposing aura. It stood towering there, as if it hadn't moved at all since time immemorial. This was probably the Nether Hall. When Lin's son arrived here, numerous cultivators rushed over in succession. Obviously, they were just like Lin's son. There weren't many cultivators who had survived that catastrophe. The door of the Nether Hall had been opened, and it was boundlessly dark within it. However, this was unable to stop the footsteps of those experts from entering it. The reason was very simple. This was a heaven-defying fortune that had been sealed for eternity. Even if they were clearly aware that heaven-defying dangers were lurking within it, would anyone give up? Moreover, none of the experts who were able to survive and make it all the way here were ordinary people. Many people noticed Lin's son, and they revealed vigilant expressions. On the other hand, when they saw Lin's son just stand there and not enter the Nether Hall, besides causing them to be vigilant, they couldn't help but be slightly bewildered. But in next to no time, they couldn't be bothered about all of this and charged into the Nether Hall. Why haven't the old toad and the others made an appearance? Could it be that they've already entered this hall before I arrived? Lin's son waited for a long time, yet didn't see any trace of the old toad and the others, and he couldn't help but be slightly bewildered. After pondering for a moment, he arrived before a damaged rock, and then he carved a line of words on it with his palm before he stabbed the rock into the ground at the side of the hall. After that, he took a deep breath and stepped into the Nether Hall as well. It was a boundless expanse of darkness behind the entrance of the hall, and one couldn't even see their own fingers. However, when they entered it, it was a completely different world, and a ruined ruin appeared before them. There were pavilions, altars, winding corridors, gardens, beast gardens, flower fields. But all of them were ruined, deathly silent, and had transformed into ruins. Moreover, there were traces of battle everywhere. There were palm prints, saber marks, and dried bloodstains. They hadn't been destroyed after experiencing the corrosion of countless years, and it seemed extremely shocking. Lin's son swept the surroundings with his gaze. Yet he didn't even have the time to investigate clearly when a fierce gale assaulted him. Whoosh! This was a flying blade that was shaped like a shuttle. It was entirely pitch black, and it was swift and fierce like a black bolt of lightning. It was inconceivably fast. Lin's son narrowed his eyes and flicked his fingers. With a bang, the flying blade exploded. To Lin's surprise, a saber, a white jade cauldron, and a divine sword appeared at the same time from all directions where he stood. A pincer attack. The war blade was like a waterfall, flowing with Tao light. The precious cauldron surged with brilliant totems, suppressing all directions, and the divine sword displayed a wondrous technique, incomparably sharp. Such a sudden attack was seamless, blocking all Lin's son's retreat. There was no doubt that there was more than one opponent, and all of them were extremely powerful and had great teamwork. Unfortunately, they underestimated Lin's son. Lin's son didn't dodge. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the oncoming saber. With the strength of his palms and fingers, a tsunami-like power surged out. Crack! Although this saber was not a supreme weapon, it was almost the same. But at this moment, it was crushed by Lin's son's grasp. In the dark, there was a cry of alarm. A figure moved far away like a ghost. Boom! At the same time, other attacks had approached. Around Lin's son, a piece of bright light flowed and turned into symbols of tribulation, spreading suddenly. First, the white jade cauldron was suppressed, making a shrill wail and exploding into a rain of light all over the sky. Then the divine sword was broken inch by inch. Moreover, the remaining power of the symbols of tribulation didn't decrease. It swept out, revealing an invincible power. The strong men hiding in the dark changed their faces suddenly. They flashed and retreated to the distance. They all realized that they had met a tough opponent, Lin Sun's black eyes were like lightning. He grasped in the air, and the power of Basha prohibition came out. Damn it! A young man in a gray robe was stagnant, like a bug stuck in a spider's web, unable to move. He was so shocked that he shouted angrily, "Puff!" But immediately his body suddenly died, turning into a rain of blood. Yet now, the strength of the Basha restriction had already shown signs of shedding its wings, and it was more than 2 times stronger than before. So, killing an ordinary opponent was utterly as easy as blowing off dust. Oh no! In other directions, there were 3 figures fleeing. When they saw this scene, they were all so shocked that their souls almost flew out of their bodies. They had ambushed here before. With tacit cooperation and strong combat power, they killed many targets in a sneak attack and obtained spoils of war. Who would have thought that they failed at this moment? Even though the enemy was alone, he was formidable to the point it caused their hearts to tremble. With a raise of his hand, he'd broken through their surprise attack and killed one of their companions. Go, damn it! With a loud shout, they rushed in different directions at an extremely fast speed, showing the level of a peerless king. Unfortunately, in Lin Sun's eyes, it was not enough at this moment. As early as in the tomb world, he was able to easily kill the white-robed young man, Wu Shanlin, and even Wu Lingdao, a peerless figure who had stepped into the first tribulation of longevity. Now, his strength had improved a lot in the 3,000 discussions in the purple bamboo forest. It was no exaggeration to say that the peerless king in the same realm was not enough in Lin Sun's eyes. In the twinkling of an eye, Lin Sun had already punched 3 times in the air. Every single punch was branded with an imposing aura that belonged solely to him. It contained a technique that belonged solely to him. It shook the heavens and the earth and was boundlessly formidable. This was the martial power of the realm of my method. With 3 explosions, the bodies of the 3 figures that had split up exploded at the same time, like flies that had been swatted to death. It could be said that he killed the enemy as easily as killing a chicken. A bunch of trash. How dare you rob others with such little ability? You're courting death. Lin Sun looked contemptuous. He glanced around and walked towards the depths. Demon God Lin is getting more and more abnormal. As soon as Lin Sun left, a strong man who had just entered the Nether Palace couldn't help sighing with emotion. He had seen the scene just now, and his scalp was numb. A peerless king was so powerful that it was rarely seen since ancient times. But in Lin Sun's hands, it was as fragile as paper. The Nether Palace was obviously a small world. It was extremely large, and there were rows of ancient buildings in it, but most of them had collapsed for countless years. Lin Sun didn't stop all the way. Before he arrived here, many experts had entered here long ago, and there was utterly no need to think about it. So long as there were any valuable treasures along the way, they were bound to be completely seized. A dry lotus pond appeared, and in front of it stood a broken stone tablet with the words "Rebirth" written on it. These 2 words moved Lin Sun. It was said that there was a rebirth pool in the nether world, which could be used to expiate the souls of the dead and reincarnate. Unfortunately, apart from this stone tablet, there was nothing else worth paying attention to. As he went on, Lin Sun saw some strange but frightening words one after another. In front of the dilapidated palace, there was a horizontal board with the words "Ghost Judge." In the broken and collapsed ancient temple, there was a broken tablet with the words 6 paths of not being empty. In addition, there are also words Sunken Land, Sunluo Field, Soul Rotating Platform, Hell River, and so on. Every name seemed to have a shocking origin and legend, as if they had really come to the netherworld, not the human world. However, all of them had already collapsed, resembling ruins. Along the way, Lin Sun could already judge that there must have been an extremely terrible fight here a long time ago. That was because the traces of the battle could still be seen in every inch of the ruins. Get out! Suddenly, there was a roar in the distance. Along with the voice, there were fierce collisions echoing. Lin Sun was shocked. He suddenly raised his head and spread out his huge spiritual awareness. Thousands of meters away, there was a black stone platform shaped like a hill. At this time, A group of people was fighting fiercely on the black stone platform. Boom! The divine light was blazing and the light of Tao was roaring. It was extremely fierce and dangerous. It could be clearly seen that these strong men were fighting for the control of the black stone platform, as if there was something on it that was enough to make them jealous. Lin Sun quietly approached and observed carefully, but found that they were all strange faces. There was no trace of Old Toad. The black stone platform was 9 meters high and shaped like an altar. It was imprinted with old patterns, such as yakshas patrolling, ghosts walking at night, hellfire shining in the sky, and blood river rushing. Every stone carving was full of strange and penetrating gloominess. In front of the black stone platform, there was a stone tablet collapsed on the ground. From the broken and blurred writing, it could still be recognized that it was 3 life rock. 3 life, generally speaking, was the previous life, the present life, and the future life, representing the past, the present, and the future. Obviously, this black stone platform was the so-called 3 life rock. Soon, Lin Sun noticed that there was an ancient scripture engraved on the ground at the top of the rock. The amazing thing was that the ancient scripture seemed to be moving. Every character was like an earthworm, twisting and flickering densely, flowing with obscure luster. The reason why those top kings fought must be to fight for this scripture. Moreover, this scripture was engraved on the ground, so it was obvious that it couldn't be taken away. In other words, this battle decided who could control the 3 life rock so that they could comprehend this ancient scripture. Lin Sun spread out his spiritual awareness and suddenly felt a chill in his heart. He noticed that there were still many hidden breaths in the vicinity of the rock. Obviously, there were still strong men secretly watching here. Tantai Lu, your Tai Taoism has already seized so many opportunities. Now you still want to compete with us for this ancient scripture. It's too unsightly. Someone roared in the battle. Tai Taoism? Lin Sun looked over and saw a young man in a bright yellow robe in the middle of the battle. He smiled indifferently and said, "The fight for opportunities depends on who has the bigger fist. Now that I have the bigger fist, why can't I occupy this place?" There was an unconcealable pride in his voice. Chapter 1241. Tantai Lu did have the capital to be arrogant. Alone, he suppressed the other strong people and made them unable to approach him. His combat power was superb. Everyone knew that in Tai Taoism, Wang Xuanyu was undoubtedly the most dazzling figure and was regarded as the leader of the younger generation of his sect. But Tantai Lu was also not to be underestimated. Although his reputation was not as great as Wang Xuanyu's, he was not inferior to Wang Xuanyu in terms of foundation and combat power. More importantly, he was an ancient freak. Boom! On the 3 life rock, Tantai Lu fought alone in all directions. Dressed in a bright yellow robe, he was like the son of heaven. His every move burst out dazzling Taoist light. Bang! Soon, an enemy was defeated. His chest was smashed by Tantai Lu's palm, and he flew out upside down. The other strong people's faces changed greatly, and their momentum was severely damaged. I said, "You have no chance." Tantai Lu looked calm, and his voice was full of absolute confidence. His eyes were like lightning, sweeping around other places, and the rats hiding in the dark. "You'd better get out of here before I get angry." His voice was like thunder, and the expressions of the strong people hiding in the dark changed slightly. On the 3 life rock, Tantai Lu was not the only successor of Tai Taoism. There were 4 other people guarding around, but none of them made a move, because Tantai Lu alone was enough to suppress the whole field. Lin Sun keenly noticed that some strong people in the dark had decisively given up and left quietly. But there were also some people who stayed, obviously unwilling to leave like this. "Humph, don't blame me for being ruthless." Tantai Lu snorted coldly and suddenly burst out his divine power. In a flash, he suppressed 2 more opponents and killed them ruthlessly. Like Wu Lingdao, this guy has also set foot in the first tribulation of longevity. No wonder he dares to look down on us. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed. At this moment, a voice sounded in his ear. "I'm Wang Xing of Huangting Sword Sect. Nice to meet you, Taoism Peer Lin. Lin Sun looked calm, but his divine sense detected a young man in a snow-white Confucian robe standing in a ruin not far away. Just say it. Lin Sun also knew that the Yellow Court Sword sect was an ancient orthodoxy in the Big Dipper world. We are willing to cooperate with fellow Taoist Lin and attack together to repel the greater one Taoist sect. Then, we can share that ancient scripture. What does fellow Taoist Lin think? Wang Xing said bluntly. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed slightly. At this moment, he noticed that at least 6 spiritual awareness forces were watching him. Obviously, the owners of these divine senses were on the same side as Wang Xing, and they wanted to form an alliance with him to deal with Tantai, Lu, and the others. Fellow Taoist Lin, you're all alone. Although your battle prowess is extraordinary, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult for you to seize that ancient scripture. Wang Xing's voice was low and calm. If you cooperate with us, not only can you comprehend that ancient scripture together, you can also obtain our friendship. Lin Sun was still thinking about it, but when he heard this, he frowned. Seeing Lin's silence, Wang Xing seemed to be a little unhappy and said, Taoism Peer Lin, I have given you a chance. I hope you can make a decision soon. Otherwise, when we fight later, I'm afraid. Lin Sun said, Afraid of what? Wang Xing's eyes flashed with cold light. I'm afraid that we may be enemies instead of friends. There was a hint of threat in his voice. Lin Sun immediately understood that Wang Xing and the others had never thought of cooperating with him at all. The reason why they wanted him to join them was that they were worried that Lin Sun would also intervene in the competition. Brother Lin, it's not easy for you to cultivate. We admire you very much for your achievements today, but if you insist on going your own way, I'm afraid the consequences won't be good. Wang Xing said, Well, as long as you promise not to get involved in this matter, and just watch from the sidelines, you can also obtain our friendship. He spoke quickly because the fierce battle on the 3 Lifetime Rock was coming to an end. Your friendship. Lin Sun's lips curled up. How much is it worth? Since you made it clear, I might as well tell you that it's not too late to leave now. Otherwise, once the battle starts, it won't be so easy to leave. You. Wang Xing's face darkened, and his heart was filled with anger. He thought that he had been very humble, but who would have thought that Demon Lin didn't appreciate it at all? Wang Xing's companions couldn't help sneering in their hearts. This Demon Lin was really as rampant as the legend said. Did he really think that he could be lawless after massacring a few famous mountains and blessed lands? You don't know how to appreciate favors. After a while, Wang Xing snorted coldly. His words were very rude. Seeing this, Lin Sun's black eyes flashed coldly. Without saying anything more, he stood up and revealed his figure from the dark. Wang Xing's face suddenly darkened to the extreme. Was this guy really going to fight against them? Brother Wang, isn't it better? Let Demon Lin confront Tai Taoism. It's just like a sandpiper and a clam fighting each other. We just need to sit back and reap the benefits. Someone chuckled, revealing an excited expression. The others were also overjoyed. They were naturally happy to see Fiend Celestial Lin obediently lead the charge. Wang Xing reacted quickly. His cold and gloomy face suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a sneer. This Demon Lin was still too young. At the same time, on the 3 Life Rock, Tantai Lu had also suppressed his opponents. He had killed 5 people and escaped 6. His record was extremely beautiful. I'm not arrogant, but I'm really invincible. Tantai Lu laughed loudly. He was complacent and in high spirits. Senior brother Tantai is right. Who in the same generation can compete with him? Senior brother Tantai is like the bright moon in the sky. The others are just fireflies. How can they compete with you? The nearby successors of the Supreme One Tao sect all began to praise him, as if they were proud of him. Tantai Lu knew that this was flattery, but he still enjoyed it. He couldn't help laughing again and sighed. It's lonely at the top. Who can understand? Suddenly, he was stunned and noticed Lin Sun coming out from the dark. He raised his eyebrows and asked, Who are you? Do you also want to die? A woman next to him said in surprise, Senior brother Tantai, this guy is Demon Lin. Demon Lin. These 3 words seemed to have magical power, causing the atmosphere to suddenly become silent. It also made the faces of the other people of Taoism change abruptly and their hearts tremble. Nowadays, whoever dared to say that they had not heard of the title of Demon Lin was absolutely useless. This was a fierce and ruthless person with shocking courage. He had massacred several famous mountains and blessed lands. He was already famous in the ancient desolation domain. It was impossible for the descendants of Taoism not to know this. Therefore, when they saw Lin Sun appear, they all became vigilant. Sensing the change in the atmosphere, Tantai Lu couldn't help but frown. Especially when he saw that Lin Sun was alone, he became even more dissatisfied. Junior brothers and sisters, it's just a little demon Lin. Why are you so embarrassed? Tantai Lu reprimanded, causing the others to look ashamed. Then, they all became courageous. Indeed, they had senior brother Tantai here, so what was there to be afraid of? Demon Lin, right? You're also a top figure, so I can be more lenient with you. Let me give you a piece of advice. Disappear now, otherwise, today will be the day you lose your reputation. Tantai Lu raised his chin slightly, his eyes cold as he looked down at Lin Sun, who was walking over from the 3-Life Rock. Whether it was his words or his demeanor, there was a hint of frivolity. He was using this method to express his attitude towards Demon Lin. It was as if he was saying that they all feared Demon Lin, but he was not. Secretly, Wang Xing and the others became excited and paid close attention. Who gave you the courage to speak to me like this? Lin Sun walked and floated into the void. He glanced indifferently at Tantai Lu and the others and said, "If any of you know where Wang Xuanyu is, I can let him go now and inform Wang Xuanyu." His words were casual, but Wang Xing and the others couldn't help but be stunned. This guy was so arrogant. He didn't take Tantai Lu seriously at all, and he even named Wang Xuanyu. The descendants of the Tai Taoist sect all had a look of "did I hear wrong?" They were speechless. This Demon Lin was really as arrogant as the rumors said. However, he was destined to pay a heavy lesson this time. You think I'm not as good as Wang Xuanyu? Tantai Lu's expression was already extremely cold. His bright yellow robe was fluttering, and his whole body exuded a terrifying aura. Everyone's heart thumped, realizing that senior brother Tantai was angry. After all, he was the most dissatisfied with Wang Xuanyu. I haven't seen Wang Xuanyu, but in my opinion, you are all the same. There is no difference. Lin Sun's words were casual, but in the ears of others, they seemed extremely arrogant, because everyone knew that whether it was Tantai Lu or Wang Xuanyu, they were all top figures among the peerless kings. Looking at the entire Upper Nine Realms, there were probably few who dared to evaluate them like this. Die! Tantai Lu couldn't bear it anymore. With a loud shout, he rushed up, releasing endless black Tao light. Boom! He waved his fist like a dragon, with the power to kill Zhou Su. He was even stronger than before. In the dark, the eyes of Wang Xing and others flickered. They all saw that in the face of a great enemy like Demon God Lin, Tantai Lu did not lose his mind because of anger, but used a stronger means. The profundities deduced from this punch was sufficient to move anyone of the same generation. In an instant, Lin Sun judged that Tantai Lu's combat power was roughly the same as the 13th Golden Crow Prince, Wu Lingdao. To everyone's surprise, Tantai Lu's punch seemed to hit a wall of qi. Before it could get close to Lin Sun, it was blocked, making a dull explosion. Lin Sun, however, stood still, with a hint of playfulness in his eyes, like a monkey playing a trick. Tantai Lu's face darkened, and he roared. The power around his body surged, and the violent Tao light gathered in his palm, bursting out again. Boom! The fist energy broke through all obstacles and blasted straight at Lin Sun's head. However, at this moment, a brilliant tribulation word appeared in front of Lin Sun, and suddenly turned into a divine beast that soared into the air. Amidst an ear-piercing explosion, the glaring fist force was shattered, and Tantai Lu's entire body was sent flying. Chapter 1242. Thud, thud, thud. Tantai Lu was knocked more than 30 meters away, and he took a few steps back before he managed to stabilize his figure. His face was already extremely livid, and the veins on his forehead were bulging. Everyone present was shocked. But before they could react, Tantai Lu had already let out a long roar and rushed forward again. Clang! A bright saber appeared in his hand, and it was covered in Taoist markings and flowing with divine brilliance. He slashed out. 8 storm slash. Wherever the blade pointed, there was a vast expanse of dazzling whiteness. The surrounding void exploded with a bang, and a shocking crack appeared. This was Tantai Lu's ultimate move, a saber technique with shocking killing power. Saber technique was a Taoist technique. When the saber slashed out, it seemed to be accompanied by the Great Way, causing heaven and earth to tremble. This attack made Lin Sun's black eyes light up. A snow-white ice dragon soared into the sky, and its roar was like a dragon as it coiled in the void. Boom! The saber light and Taoist light all over the sky exploded. The chaotic clouds collapsed, and the void was in disorder. Everyone gasped. Only when they saw it with their own eyes did they understand that Demon God Lin's current fierce reputation was not exaggerated. Swish! Tantai Lu rushed over again, his robe fluttering, and his long hair dancing wildly. His saber triggered the power of heaven and earth, causing ghosts and gods to cry, and all things to collapse. Ghost and God yin-yang saber split. This was another ultimate move. Moreover, Tantai Lu had obviously used his full strength. His power was terrifying, and his aura oppressed the surrounding people to the point of suffocation. Lin Sun still stood there without moving. A tribulation rune flashed out and transformed into the Swanee seal. It emitted the aura of a true dragon, and the oppressive pressure caused the heaven and earth to shake violently. Bang! The two collided, and the saber light collapsed like paper. Tantai Lu was almost hit by the Swanee seal, and he dodged in a sorry state. He had completely realized that his opponent was far stronger than he had imagined, but he was already in a difficult position at the moment, and he could only brace himself and continue fighting. For a time, the saber light crisscrossed like thousands of waterfalls dancing in the void, rolling like a raging sea, and had the power to drown all directions. It was so powerful that it made people's scalp numb. How could a peerless king who had stepped into the first tribulation of longevity be compared to an ordinary person when he attacked in rage? But all these efforts were in vain in front of Lin Sun. Merely circulating the Tribulation Dragon's 9 transformations allowed him to be invulnerable to all techniques, and he destroyed all of Tantai Lu's attacks with indescribable ease and ease. From beginning to end, Lin Sun didn't move at all. The successors of the Greater One Dao sect were completely dumbfounded. Previously, when they were reprimanded by Tantai Lu, they felt rather ashamed. They believed that with Tantai Lu around, there was no need to fear Fiend Celestial Lin. Who would have thought that Tantai Lu would not even be able to touch a single piece of Fiend Celestial Lin's robes, even after giving it her all? In the dark, the expressions of Wang Xing and the others were also uncertain. Earlier, they held the thought of sitting on top of the mountain to watch the tigers fight, and they rather took pleasure in Shun Shi's misfortune as they felt that they could reap the benefits without doing anything. But now, they realized that they were wrong. When 2 tigers fought, they were at least evenly matched. However, in front of Fiend God Lin, Tantai Lu was at best a paper tiger. Was Tantai Lu not strong? No, with his combat strength, it was enough to make Wang Xing and the others extremely fearful. Otherwise, he would not have been hiding in the dark and not daring to show up to fight Tantai Lu. But now, Tantai Lu could not gain any advantage in the battle. This could only prove that it was not that he was not strong, but that Fiend Celestial Lin was too powerful. What are you waiting for? Attack together. Suddenly, Tantai Lu roared. At this moment, his face was extremely livid, and his eyes were about to pop out of his sockets. He was like a furious beast. Compared to his previously complacent and high-spirited self, it was as if he was a completely different person. He was like a completely different person. Boom! The other four successors of the Greater One Tao sect did not have the time to think too much and attacked brazenly. They all knew that if they did not attack now, it would be difficult for them to stay alive, let alone occupy the Three Lives Rock and comprehend the ancient scripture. Kill. As soon as they attacked, the successors of the Greater One Tao sect used their full strength and did not dare to hold back at all. For a time, there was a surge of divine radiance and the light of treasures. The scene was astonishing as the indescribable Taoist techniques and the dazzling treasures interweaved. One had to admit that the overall strength of the Greater One Tao sect was very strong. Each of the four successors had the battle strength to hold their own and could not be underestimated. With their addition, Tantai Lu immediately felt the pressure on him lighten. Unexpectedly, Lin Sun was not alarmed, even though he was fighting 1 against 5. Instead, he revealed a smile and said, "That's more like it." Boom! Without any hesitation, he moved from stillness and charged forward like a dragon that had emerged from an abyss. In his palm, he performed the 9 strikes for shaking the heavens. Around him were resplendent tribulation symbols that seemed as if they were made of divine gold. He was like a fiend celestial. The battle had reached an unprecedentedly intense stage. Get ready. No matter who wins later, it will be the best time to snatch the Three Lives Rock. Secretly, Wang Xing took a deep breath and quickly sent a voice transmission. A cold light flashed in the eyes of the others as they nodded in agreement. Remember, once you attack, you must go all out. Be especially careful of that fiend celestial Lin. That fellow is an extremely difficult person to deal with. If you become enemies with him, Wang Xing was still worried and continued to warn them. However, before he could finish his words, he stopped abruptly and his eyeballs almost fell out. That was because the battle had taken a shocking turn. Boom! Lin Sun's body surged with divine brilliance as he punched out 4 times in a row. Each punch had the power to sweep through the universe and was unstoppable. The 4 successors of Tai Taoism were blown away one by one. Blood spurted from their mouths and noses, and their bodies almost exploded as they let out shrill screams. The siege was thus resolved. It only took a dozen breaths from start to finish. Wang Xing's hands and feet were cold. Even the siege could not suppress the ferocity of Fiend Celestial Lin. His companions were also shocked at this moment. They turned pale with fright and began to waver in their hearts. Previously, they had thought of taking this opportunity to attack and reap the good fortune. Who would have thought that the strength of Fiend Celestial Lin had completely exceeded their expectations? How could they make a move now? In contrast, Tantai Lu was even more frightened. Previously, Lin Sun had not moved at all and was passively receiving his attacks. Therefore, although he knew that Lin Sun was extremely powerful, he did not know exactly how powerful he was. But now he understood. Facing Lin Sun's attack, he felt as if he was being suppressed by a god. There was an unprecedented sense of suffocating oppression, and he felt extremely powerless. Even if he used everything he had, he could not shake Lin Sun in the slightest. How could he be so powerful? Before Tantai Lu could figure it out, an ancient and vigorous fist force broke through the air with the power to crush everything. Just the momentum contained in the fist force made Tantai Lu's hair stand on end, and he felt a fatal danger. Without hesitation, he withdrew and retreated at an extremely fast speed. Bang! But even so, his body was still swept by the fist force. He immediately felt as if he had been slapped by the hand of God. His internal organs were almost shattered, and he bled from the shock of his 7 orifices. He did not know how many tendons and bones in his body were broken. Seeing this scene, Wang Xing and the others had the urge to turn around and flee. Too powerful. Just looking at it from afar made them feel an indescribable sense of fear. Go! Tantai Lu roared, blood still dripping from his lips. He led the other successors of Tai Taoism and chose to flee. There was no way to fight anymore. Lin Sun's strength had destroyed their fighting spirit. How could they dare to fight with their lives? Tell Wang Xuanyu that I have something to talk to him face to face. Let him get ready. Lin Sun did not chase after him. At that time, Wang Xuanyu took away a congenital Taoist fire that Lin Sun had his eyes on in the stone tower, but he did not kill Old Toad. Naturally, Lin Sun would not do such a thing. He had a clear distinction between gratitude and grudges and disdain to kill indiscriminately. In the distance, Tantai, Lu, and the others had all fled and disappeared. No one knew whether they had heard Lin Sun's words or not. But no matter what, this time, Lin Sun must seek justice for Old Toad and vent his anger. Lin Sun's figure floated down on the three-life rock, looked up at the darkness, and said, "Everyone, don't you want to compete for the fortune? You can start now." The faces of Wang Xing and the others suddenly became gloomy and hesitant. If they left like this, they would be extremely unwilling in their hearts. But if they didn't leave, they had no confidence to defeat Lin Sun, so they were in a dilemma. "Just now, didn't you say that I didn't know how to appreciate favors? And you threatened me in every way. Why are you scared now?" Lin Sun's voice was indifferent, and he did not hide his disdain. "Taoism, Peer Lin, we just wanted to cooperate with you before and make friends with you. Why do you have to say these sarcastic words?" Wang Xing took a deep breath and said with a gloomy face, "Huh." Lin Sun laughed, and his black eyes were cold. He said, "Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. You just want to take advantage of the situation. Now, I'll give you a chance. Do you dare to come and fight?" His voice was flat, but there was a sense of sonorous disdain in it, echoing in the void. Wang Xing was suddenly speechless, and his face changed. "Demon Lin, are you really going to be our enemy?" A young man was furious. He felt humiliated by Lin Sun too much. "Get out." Lin Sun's lips suddenly burst out in a loud voice, like a cattail roaring at the universe. It was just one word, but the young man staggered and his face turned pale. He was so shocked that he almost fell to the ground. It was so embarrassing that the young man was so ashamed and angry that he wanted to find a hole to hide in. "Do you think people like you are qualified to be my enemy?" Lin Sun sneered. "Let's go." Wang Xing gritted his teeth, took a deep breath, and made a decision. They had been shocked by Lin Sun's power. Even if they went to fight, they had no chance of winning. "We'll let you go," Lin Sun said indifferently. Wang Xing and others changed their faces, and their hearts sank to the bottom. They realized that Demon Lin didn't intend to let them go at all. "You've got this ancient scripture, and we don't want to haggle over it. What else do you want?" Wang Xing's face was livid. "You can be spared from death, but you can't escape punishment. I always distinguish kindness and hatred. You've offended me. If you just leave like this, how will the world think of me?" Chapter 1243. Lin Sun's words made the expressions of Wang Xing and the rest turn extremely ugly. "What a joke. Do you really think we're afraid of you?" Someone could not help but speak harshly. This was going too far. They had already decided to retreat and not get involved in this matter, but Demon God Lin was still relentless. What did he think they were? As peerless king powerhouses, every one of them was extremely proud. Clang! Lin Sun did not speak, and only slashed out with his broken blade. Silence chop. With a puff, the arrogant person in the distance did not even have time to react before his head was chopped off. Blood gushed out like a fountain. Wang Xing and the rest gasped, their hands and feet cold. Only then did they realize one thing. Based on Demon God Lin's past deeds, he was definitely a fearless fellow. The scene before their eyes proved this point. A peerless king's head had been taken in an instant. "I don't want to waste any more time. As punishment, each of you hand over one divine herb, and you can leave." Lin Sun's voice was indifferent. This was the divine underworld palace. The three-life rock was too big a target. The longer it was delayed, the more powerful powerhouses would covet it. There was dead silence. Wang Xing and the rest gritted their teeth in hatred. Did this guy think divine herbs were rotten cabbages? But when they met Lin Sun's cold gaze, although they were indignant and humiliated, they still chose to lower their heads. Floating Sun Divine Vine. 9 turns Soul Transformation Flower. Feather Purple Green Fruit. Shunluo Silva Stargrass. There were a total of 4 divine herbs of immeasurable value. But to Lin Sun, these divine herbs were only mediocre or inferior. None of them could compare to the Yin Yang Divine Lotus. But seeing them obediently lower their heads and cooperate, Lin Sun did not intend to continue taking revenge. He waved his hand and dismissed them like dispersing flies. Before leaving, Wang Xing and the rest were filled with hatred and anger. But the situation was against their control, so they could only endure it. They did not even dare to say a harsh word, lest Lin Sun target them again. Lin Sun also knew that these guys already hated him. If there was a chance, they would definitely take revenge. But he did not care. With his current combat strength, he did not fear the grudges of these unbearable opponents. Would an eagle care about the grudges of ants? Of course not. This little episode didn't even make waves in Lin's heart. He looked at an ancient scripture engraved on the three-life rock. When he looked at it from a close distance, he could feel the mysteriousness of this scripture even more. Its characters were twisted like earthworms, cryptic and mysterious, flowing with Tao light. The most miraculous thing was that the densely packed characters were surging like living creatures. An ordinary cultivator would absolutely be bewildered by it, because even though this scripture was miraculous, it was extremely obscure, and it was utterly impossible to comprehend any profundities from it. It was to the extent that he couldn't even force himself to memorize it, because the words of this ancient scripture were constantly changing and flowing. No wonder only Tantai, Lu, and the others are fighting for the ancient scripture here. Wang Xuanyu must have realized that although this scripture is miraculous, it can't be taken away and memorized. Trying to decipher and comprehend its mysteries is bound to consume too much time. Lin Sun had a glimmer of enlightenment. There was obviously more than one fortuitous encounter in the Nether God Palace, and a figure like Wang Xuanyu would naturally not waste all his energy and time here. However, there was a smile on Lin Sun's lips at the moment, because he happened to know how to comprehend such ancient scripture. Clatter, the huge power of divine awareness spread out and poured into the ancient scripture engraved on the stone like thousands of tentacles. Lines of dense and twisted earthworms fluttered and danced along different trajectories. They were extremely complicated and messy, which gave people a headache. When the divine awareness tried to capture these characters, they would disappear in a flash, which made people anxious. However, Lin Sun didn't care about this. In his divine awareness, these ancient characters were like spiritual tattoos. Although they were ever-changing and untraceable, as long as he arranged and reorganized them one by one, he could see through their trajectories, capture and summarize them one by one. If that was all, other cultivators could certainly do it. The difficulty was that each ancient character represented a completely different meaning. If one didn't understand its mysteries, it was destined to be impossible to arrange and reorganize them into an ancient scripture. However, this was still not a problem for Lin Sun. Buzz. The next moment, he used his divine awareness as a brush and gently drew a light and graceful trajectory on the ancient scripture engraved on the stone. Then, an amazing scene appeared. The ancient characters that were originally flying in the stone seemed to be attracted and began to draw close to the trajectory drawn by Lin Sun. Like a shoal of fish finding bait, they began to converge. Lin Sun kept waving his divine awareness, and more ancient characters gathered. Later, the dense ancient characters began to wander and fly along the trajectory drawn by Lin Sun. At this moment, Lin Sun's divine awareness suddenly stopped like the tip of a pen. Buzz. A strange roar sounded from the stone. Countless earthworm-like ancient characters jumped out of the pattern and rushed to the sea of consciousness along Lin Sun's divine awareness. Boom! Suddenly, Lin Sun's sea of consciousness shook fiercely and was filled with various ancient characters. They kept gathering and shining. In the end, they turned into a beautiful ancient scripture. Lin Sun took a long breath. When he entered the gate to heaven for the first time and passed the first test of Green Cloud Path, he encountered a similar test. It was a flowing light spiritual tattoo. In the end, it was actually a cultivation technique. It was just that someone used spiritual tattoos to completely integrate the mystery of the cultivation method into the veins and trajectories of each spiritual tattoo. This ancient scripture engraved on the stone was exactly the same as Flowing Light's spiritual tattoo, so it was not difficult for Lin Sun. But soon, Lin Sun was shocked and a little stunned, because the name of this ancient scripture was Great Meditating Magic, and the cultivation method he got from Flowing Light spiritual tattoo was meditating magic. No wonder even the way of meditation is so similar. It turns out that there is some kind of echo and connection between them. Lin Sun realized that this was not a coincidence. The real coincidence was that he didn't expect to get great meditating magic in the Hall of God of Underworld. This way, in the distance, there was a sound of breaking through the air, which woke Lin Sun from his meditation. He had no time to think more and rushed to the distance. Not long after Lin Sun left, a group of strong figures appeared. Come on, the ancient scripture engraved on the Three Lives rock. There is no one here. When these experts rushed over, they were a bit surprised. Then, they were overjoyed and hurriedly rushed up the Three Life cliff. But the next moment, they were dumbfounded, because that place was empty since a long time ago. That incomparably mystical ancient scripture diagram had been taken away by someone a long time ago. Instantly, the joy that these powerhouses were feeling disappeared without a trace. Cutting the soul to refine the Three Lives' godly form. On the way, Lin Sun perceived a little and understood the mystery of great meditating magic. It turned out to be a kind of inheritance of cutting one's soul and refining the Three Lives' godly form. What was the Three Lives? Previous life, present life, and future life. That was the past, the present, and the future. And the great netherworld divine art was a secret technique that divided a cultivator's primordial spirit into three, turning it into three primordial spirits, and cultivating the past, present, and future respectively. If it were in the past, Lin Sun would definitely be confused. After all, the spirit was the foundation of the king's longevity. A little damage may affect the practitioner's cultivation, not to mention cutting the spirit and dividing it into three parts. It was just like self-mutilation. But for Lin Sun, whose spiritual power had reached the second level of gathering of divine flowers, this great meditating magic was unprecedented and magical. Because the state of gathering flowers in prominence was divided into three realms, namely the past, the present, and the future. Every time a practitioner cultivated a new realm, a flower of Tao would be condensed in his spirit, which represented the essence of the Three Lives. From this point of view, the practice of great meditating magic was to divide the spirit into three parts and let three different spirits comprehend different realms. Wonderful, it was really wonderful. Lin Sun was extremely amazed and realized that this great meditating magic was absolutely an incredible, peerless inheritance. If he could really cultivate it successfully, it was very likely that he would go further on the road of immortality, because the core of the lantern-like soul was the secret of immortality. If it weren't in the divine underworld palace, Lin Sun would have impulsively wanted to cultivate this scripture. Found it. Before long, Lin Sun came to a blood river. This was the true river of blood. The surging blood-colored river water surged majestically. It was unknown where it began and where it ended, as if it would last for eternity. As soon as it arrived, there was a suffocating, oppressive wave that enveloped this side of the world. Even with Lin Sun's strength, his whole body was tense and his mind was awe-inspiring. Looking carefully in the sky on the other side of the blood river, there were blood clouds gathering. In the clouds and mist, there was an extremely magnificent blood altar. Unfortunately, it seemed to be separated by a blood river. Even if Lin Sun observed it with his spiritual awareness, he couldn't see what it was at all. It was shrouded with a frightening sacred breath, which isolated the spiritual awareness. It was also here that Lin Sun felt the breath belonging to Tantai Lu. Before, when he defeated Tantai Lu, he had already stamped his own mark on Tantai Lu without a trace. Now he just came here according to the map. It seems that Wang Xuanyu and others are on the other side of the blood river. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed. Clatter, in the blood river, a black boat suddenly appeared, and a skeleton boatman came with a white bone oar. Seeing this familiar scene, Lin Sun couldn't help being stunned. Could it be that the blood lake they saw before was connected to the blood river in front of them? Lin Sun looked carefully again and found that he was right. It was the black boat and the skeleton boatman he had seen before. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Along with the appearance of the black boat, figures of experts appeared one after another from the other areas of the blood river, and all of them converged in this direction. Hurry up, the ghost boat is coming. Someone shouted. If we can't get on the boat this time, the heaven-defying fortune on the other side will be completely taken away by the strong who crossed the boat earlier. These strong people had obviously been waiting for a long time. Seeing the black boat appear, they all couldn't wait. Chapter 1244. Netherworld Ship. This was the first time Lin Sun had heard this title. However, he didn't have the time to think too much about it, because at this moment, many experts had soared through the sky and occupied advantageous positions, and they intended to cross the black boat as soon as it arrived at the shore. Courting death, someone roared, and his whole body emitted blazing flames, sending a powerhouse in front of him flying. It was a young man in a crimson robe. His eyes shone brightly, his figure was imposing, and he had a head of long, snow-white hair. This was Tuoba Hun, the successor of the sacred hermit land of the southern profound world, the Sixth Mysterious House, an extremely powerful ancient monster. If anyone dares to approach, kill without mercy. A cold and deep voice rang out. A woman floated over. Her figure was graceful, and her body was surrounded by light blue dowlight. She had handsome eyes and slender eyebrows, and she was spirited and spirited. Her appearance was extremely outstanding, but her entire body emitted an aura that was as cold as ice, causing others to tremble with fear. Shweb Baoji, an ancient freak from the sky-scraping pavilion of the East Victory Domain. Many cultivators narrowed their eyes and took the initiative to dodge. But what made people's hearts palpitate was that one of the experts was slightly slower in dodging, and Shwe Baoji lifted his hand and erased his life. A misty blue rain of light sprinkled down, erasing that person's corpse completely, as if it had been dissolved. Lin Sun immediately frowned. This woman's action might be to frighten the heroes, but it was a little too vicious. Tuoba Hun turned around and glanced at Shwe Baoji. His eyes flickered, but he did not stop Shwe Baoji in the end. Obviously, he acknowledged Shwe Baoji's strength. Ha ha! The place on the other side of the Nether River is the Nether God Altar of Legend that contains heaven-defying fortune, right? This time, I will go and take a look. Accompanied by a burst of laughter, a young man with a rugged appearance and a sharp and murderous aura rushed over like a gust of wind. Cries of alarm resounded in the area. Many people couldn't dodge in time and were knocked into a mess by the violent wind brought about by the young man's figure. The ancient freak of the Donyang clan, Donyang Ting. Someone was shocked, recognizing that youth's identity. For a time, 3 top-rate existences in the ultimate Monster King realm had actually appeared, and it caused the expressions of many cultivators to change indeterminately. As the saying goes, comparisons are odious. In the outside world, every single one of these cultivators were renowned geniuses and geniuses. They were extremely dazzling, and each of them had their own pride. But since entering the upper 9 realms, in the competition between the geniuses of the same generation, these strong people who used to be regarded as elites suddenly seemed dim. As the saying goes, there's always a higher mountain, and there's always someone better out there. Right at this moment, Tuoba Hun, Skyscraper Pavilion's Shwe Baoji, and the Donyang clan's Donyang Ting appeared one after another. Their auras instantly suppressed the other cultivators. The 3 of them stood on the bank of the blood-colored Styx River, each with their own style. No one dared to approach them. But right at this moment, many cultivators noticed that a thin young man in moon-white clothes seemed to have completely not noticed the existence of Tuoba Hun and the others, and he walked directly towards the bank of the lake. Tuoba Hun frowned and squinted at Lin Sun without saying anything. Shwe Baoji's beautiful face became colder and colder. Her eyes swept over Lin Sun like sharp blades, exuding an undisguised sense of rejection. Yo, this brother dares to come close without revealing himself. Could it be that he is a hidden expert? Dong Ting looked surprised, but his voice was filled with mockery. Lin Sun didn't care about this at all. The black boat was very small and could only accommodate 5 or 6 people. It was foreseeable that there would be a fierce competition for the opportunity to board the boat. Seeing Lin Sun's indifferent expression and directly ignoring Shui Baoji and Dong Ting, Tuoba Hun couldn't help but be startled, and a strange light flashed in the depths of his eyes. The chill emitted by Shui Baoji became more and more frightening, but for some reason, she didn't take any action. After all, she had killed an expert who stood in her way just now. Dong Ting was a little embarrassed. His ridicule was directly ignored, and he had a feeling of asking for a snub. But he didn't stop Lin Sun from approaching. What? Do you still want to stand shoulder to shoulder with us? Watch carefully. This is the place where you should stop. Shui Baoji couldn't help but speak out, and her voice was bone-chilling. As she spoke, she pointed to a place 3 meters away from her, telling Lin Sun that he could only stop here. Because if Lin Sun went any further, he would come to the place behind her, which would be a potential threat to any expert. As expected, Lin Sun stopped and didn't move forward. This made Tuoba Hun and Dong Ting, who had been paying attention to Lin Sun's movements, slightly disappointed. It was as if the show they wanted to watch had ended in a hurry before it even started. Seeing this, Shui Baoji inexplicably felt much more relaxed. Her lips curved coldly, and she said, "You're sensible. If you had dared to come forward before, I'm afraid you would have been dead by now." Her words were obviously disdainful. Lin Sun smiled faintly, but didn't comment. He wouldn't choose to attack directly because of some small friction over words. Seeing that Lin Sun's momentum was completely suppressed by Shui Baoji, and he didn't dare to talk back, Tuoba Hun and Dong Ting couldn't help but be more disappointed. They muttered to themselves, "Did I see wrong? Isn't this guy a powerful and ruthless person?" The crowd in the distance could only see Lin Sun's back, but no one realized that this low-key and indifferent young man who hadn't said a word since the beginning was the infamous demon god Lin. However, it was normal that they didn't recognize him. Perhaps they had heard of Lin Sun's name, but not many of them had actually seen him. As the blood river churned, the black boat gradually approached and was clearly visible. On the shore, the atmosphere became more and more solemn and tense. Everyone was ready to fight for it. Perhaps many people would be afraid of Tuoba Hun and the other 2, but the space of the boat was enough to accommodate 5 or 6 people. This also meant that there were several opportunities to board the boat in addition to Tuoba Hun and the other 2. At the same time, Tuoba Hun and the others were also secretly on guard. At such a time, they naturally didn't dare to be careless, lest the boat capsize in the gutter. "Friend, make way. I'm taking this place." Unexpectedly, before the black boat could really get close to the shore, a shout suddenly sounded. Accompanied by the voice, a handsome young man with a jade belt and brocade robe soared into the sky and directly swept towards the area where Lin Sun was. Boom! Without asking whether Lin Sun would agree or not, the young man directly took action. His palm and fingers turned into a golden cauldron and smashed towards Lin Sun. Obviously, the young man was targeting Lin Sun. The reason was that Lin Sun chose to stop and not fight back in front of Shui Baoji, so that the young man thought that Lin Sun could be bullied. Seeing the young man in brocade robe take action, a cold light flashed in the eyes of Tuoba Hun and the others. But when they saw that the young man was only targeting Lin Sun, they immediately relaxed. Instead, they felt a little sorry for Lin Sun. A paper tiger who was bluffing was destined to be exposed. Even if they didn't take action, it didn't mean that others wouldn't do the same. Lin Sun really didn't want to take action at this time. Otherwise, he wouldn't have chosen to stop just now and not to fight back in the face of Shui Baoji's slightly disdainful words. But obviously, someone mistook his low-key attitude as weakness and could be bullied. Seeing the golden cauldron formed by the palm wind rushing towards him, Lin Sun didn't retreat or evade. He didn't even move and didn't even look back. It seemed that he didn't notice the blow at all. Many people couldn't help but sweat in their palms. Some people were stunned. Were they all wrong? This guy had been indifferent and low-key before. Was he bluffing instead of hiding his strength? Boom! Just as everyone's mind was in a whirl, there was a loud bang in the field, and the void exploded. Lin Sun stood where he was without moving at all. Only his clothes were fluttering in the wind. But the young man in brocade robe who launched the attack let out a scream of horror. His whole body was thrown in a beautiful arc in the void, and then fell into the blood river far away. Boom! In the blood river, a snow-white and huge-boned dragon rushed out, swallowed the young man's figure, and then disappeared again under the blood river. There was even no scream. Everyone was dumbfounded. They rubbed their eyes and wondered if it was an illusion, because from beginning to end, they didn't see how the young man in brocade robe was defeated and how he was thrown into the blood river. In their eyes, Lin Sun had been standing there with his hands behind his back. His handsome figure faced the vast blood river, and he didn't move at all. It seemed extremely strange and incredible, and it made people feel inexplicably cold all over. The expressions of Tuoba Han, Shui Baoji, and Dongyang Ting changed slightly, and the way they looked at Lin Sun suddenly changed. With their combat strength and vision, they were naturally able to notice that even though Lin Sun didn't make any movements, an extremely obscure and formidable restrictive force had spread out from his body, and it confined the young man in an embroidered robe in one go before tossing him into the bloody river. And it was conceivable how powerful this young man was to be able to easily imprison a peerless king and make him unable to break free. Sure enough, he's a hidden master. Dongyang Ting clapped his hands and laughed. The corner of Tuoba Hun's mouth twitched imperceptibly. He knew in his heart that they all almost offended a ruthless person just now. Fortunately, he didn't show any hostility from the beginning. Shui Baoji's beautiful face was a little uncertain. Just now, she had threatened Lin Sun and made him stop, and her words were very disdainful. However, when she was about to say something, the black boat had already reached the shore. Whoosh! Everyone only felt a blur before Lin Sun's figure disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already on the black boat. Shui Baoji didn't have time to think too much and immediately took action. Not only her, but the others also rushed to the black boat. A battle inevitably broke out. However, no one dared to make a move against Lin Sun and Tuoba Han. On the black boat, the skeleton boatman seemed to be unaware of all this, or rather, he directly ignored it all. He got up, picked up a dim oil lamp, and hung it on the bow. P.S. Thank you, Brother Chendong 6638, and other children for your monthly tickets. Chapter 1245. As soon as Lin Sun set foot on the black boat, he handed over a divine medicine. Then, he stood at the stern of the boat and looked at the mighty blood sticks. Before entering the forbidden area of Styx, Lin Sun had investigated the aura of this forbidden area with his spiritual awareness. At that time, he saw a shocking scene. A river of blood surged, and numerous strange and ominous corpses floated and sank. A Buddha died with a hole pierced between his eyebrows, looking angry. A body shaped like a black dragon cracked, winding tens of thousands of meters long. A sage in feather clothes and a crown, a strange beast with Taoist markings on its forehead without exception. All of them were buried in the blood river. At the same time, the cries of fiend gods and the sorrowful hiss of saints resounded, and it revealed a bloody scene of great calamity and terror. At that time, Lin Sun suspected that this terrible scene came from the legendary Styx. At this time, standing on a black boat, Lin Sun looked around and saw the surging blood river, as if it had existed for a long time. In a trance, Lin Sun seemed to see the strange and terrible scenes and the corpses floating and sinking in the blood river. Was this really the legendary Styx? On the black boat, Tuoba Han, Shui Baoji, and Dongyang Ting arrived one after another. They each took a seat and handed over a divine medicine. Obviously, they also knew the rules of taking a boat. Seeing Lin Sun looking at the blood river with his back to them, Tuoba Hun and the other two looked at each other and then withdrew their gazes. No one disturbed Lin Sun. The scene of the death of a young man in a brocade robe made them all realize that the young man in front of them was not inferior to them. On the shore, the fierce fighting and competition continued. Soon, two people stood out one after another and rushed to the black boat. They were a skinny man and a sweet and charming woman in purple. However, both of them were bathed in blood and looked a little embarrassed. As soon as they arrived on the boat, they handed over the divine medicine first, and then cupped their hands to Tuoba Hun and the others with a very humble attitude. Whoosh! Another person rushed over with the intention of boarding the boat, but before he could even get close, he was swept away by a layer of dim yellow light, and his body was suddenly blasted flying while blood sprayed from his mouth and nose. At the same time, the boatman pushed the oars, and the black boat slowly left the shore, heading towards the depths of the bloody Netherworld River. No, damn it! On the shore, cries of unwillingness rang out. Those experts who were unable to board the ship were filled with disappointment. On the black boat, Tuoba Hun and the others heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, they'd already obtained the qualifications to arrive at the other side, and at that time, they would naturally have the opportunity to fight for that heaven-defying fortune. Old boatman, slow down. Bring me along. Suddenly, a loud shout came from the shore, and one could faintly see a green-robed youth waving his hand and shouting. Lin Sun was standing at the stern. When he saw the green-robed lad, his eyes immediately lit up. Old Toad. But right after that, he was speechless. This fellow really came at the wrong time. Old Toad, just you wait. If I see Wang Xuan Yu, I will definitely seek justice for you. Lin Sun transmitted his voice to comfort him. Sai, that's the only way. Old Toad was very depressed. Lin then asked about Ji Xingyao and Mo Tianhe, but Old Toad shook its head, indicating that it didn't know. It turned out that Old Toad, Ji Xingyao, and the others had also been separated during the Underworld Army's attack. Pay attention to their tracks and wait here for my return. If we manage to snatch the opportunity, you will naturally have a share. Lin Sun said. Only now did Old Toad beam with joy and nod repeatedly. Don't worry, there's more than one fortuitous encounter in this Nethergod Palace. I'll go take a stroll somewhere else first. Seeing Old Toad off into the distance, Lin Sun withdrew his gaze. That green-robed youth can be considered to be lucky. He came too late and was unable to catch up to the battle and fight. Otherwise, I'm afraid he would have lost his life long ago. How could he have a chance to shout like this? Suddenly, someone laughed mockingly. It was Dongyang Ting, but as soon as the words left his mouth, he felt a piercingly cold aura lock onto him, causing him to stiffen. Looking up, he found that Lin Sun had already looked at him. His deep black eyes were full of coldness. Tuoba Hun and the others also noticed that the atmosphere was not right, and their expressions became subtle. Apologize. Lin Sun's words were concise, but there was an unquestionable tone to them. Dongyang Ting raised an eyebrow and pointed at his nose. Are you ordering me? His voice was filled with dissatisfaction. Although he sensed that Lin Sun's combat strength couldn't be underestimated, he felt a little embarrassed to be ordered by Lin Sun in front of so many people. We're all in the same boat now. If there's a dispute, everyone will be affected. I hope the two of you can each take a step back. Shweb Baoji suddenly said, Of course, if you really want to fight, you can wait until we reach the shore. His words seemed fair, but in fact, he didn't want to be implicated. The black boat was too small. Once a fight broke out, no one would be able to remain unscathed. That's right, Taoist Donyang was just joking. Why do you have to be so calculative, my friend? Tuoba Hun also nodded. As for the skinny man and the woman in purple, they both chose to remain silent and watch the situation unfold. The corners of Dongyang Ting's lips curled into a playful smile. Friend, do you still want me to apologize now? As soon as he finished speaking, his vision blurred, and Lin Sun appeared in front of him, reaching out to grab him. Dongyang Ting's expression changed abruptly. He hadn't expected Lin Sun to really dare to make a move. He was caught off guard. Shweb Baoji and Tuoba Hun, on the other hand, were furious. This guy really didn't take them seriously. He knew that they were bound to be implicated in a fight, but but he didn't care at all. But in the next moment, their pupils constricted while the flames of rage in their bellies vanished, and it was replaced by a wisp of deep coldness. The fierce battle they'd predicted didn't break out at all. Dong Ting was directly grabbed by the neck, and his body was lifted into the air. In other words, a top figure like Dong Ting, an ancient freak from the Dongyang clan, couldn't even withstand one move before he was captured. Shweb Baoji and the others instantly felt a chill in their hearts. As peers, they knew very well that even if it was a sneak attack, they wouldn't be able to subdue Dongyang Ting with one move. But now, Dongyang Ting had been captured so easily, and he didn't even have the strength to fight back. This was undoubtedly terrifying. "Apologize." Lin Sun spoke again. But this time, no one dared to question his attitude. Dongyang Ting's face was flushed, and his eyes were full of anger and unwillingness. But in the end, he lowered his head and said bitterly, "I apologize. I shouldn't have spoken rudely. Please have mercy, friend." Dongyang Ting's refusal to submit didn't happen, and Shweb Baoji and the others' expressions changed once more. Bang! Lin Sun loosened his grip, and Dongyang Ting fell onto the boat, coughing violently. 5 deep finger marks remained on his neck. "It's your turn." Lin Sun looked at Shweb Baoji. Shweb Baoji was startled at first. Then his expression turned extremely cold. "You want to order me to apologize too?" Lin Sun said. "He spoke rudely to my friend, so he should apologize. You, on the other hand, spoke rudely to me. Do you think this is the end of it?" Everyone was shocked. Only then did they realize that it wasn't that this guy didn't have a temper, but that he had been holding it in. Everyone knew that Shweb Baoji had scolded and ridiculed Lin Sun on the shore. "Aren't you worried that everyone on this boat will suffer if we fight?" Shweb Baoji said coldly. She was ready and vigilant. She wouldn't let herself repeat Dongyang Ting's mistakes. She was even prepared to drag the others down with her if she fought. By then, Lin Sun was destined to be the target of public criticism. "I'll give you a chance to apologize. If you don't cherish it, I can guarantee that you'll die on sticks today." Lin Sun's expression was calm, his black eyes cold. Even though Shweb Baoji was an extremely beautiful woman and came from a noble background, Lin Sun didn't feel the slightest bit embarrassed. Lin Sun had never been this kind of person. The atmosphere on the boat became deathly silent. Everyone was ready to fight, because they all knew that once the fight broke out, no one would be spared. At the same time, they all felt a little dissatisfied with Lin Sun. Knowing that they were all on the same boat, Lin Sun still acted so unscrupulously. Did he ignore their existence? For a moment, they looked at Lin Sun in a different way. But to their surprise, Shweb Baoji's expression changed for a long time before she finally apologized. Her voice seemed to be squeezed out of her teeth. "I apologize. I shouldn't have been so rude. I hope you can forgive me." There was no sincerity in her voice. Instead, there was a trace of hatred. Anyone could hear it, but it was an apology after all. It proved that even if Shweb Baoji hated Lin Sun to the core, she didn't want to fall out with Lin Sun at this time. "I hope there won't be a next time." Lin Sun withdrew his gaze and returned to the stern, no longer paying attention to these things. However, the atmosphere on the boat had become different. Faintly, people began to repel and fear Lin Sun. From beginning to end, the skeleton boatman turned a blind eye to all this. He held the bone, oars, and rowed on sticks. At the bow of the boat, the dim oil lamp swayed, sprinkling mottled light. The Styx was surging and tumbling endlessly. Gradually, they could see the other side, where blood-colored auspicious clouds were floating in the sky. A blood-colored altar stood high in the sky, shrouded in auspicious clouds. It looked extremely mysterious. The divine netherworld altar, a heaven-defying creation that had been sealed for thousands of years, was hidden within. Everyone had different expressions as they looked into the distance. When they reached the other side, Dongyang Ting was the first to disembark, followed by Shweb Baoji and Tuoba Han. "Taoist, please." The skinny man and the woman in purple hurriedly stepped aside to let Lin Sun go first. Lin Sun glanced at them, but didn't refuse. However, the moment he stepped out of the boat, a sudden change occurred. Chapter 1246. Boom. The terrifying glow of the Tao carried various Tao arts and treasures as it covered the heavens and the earth, and it shattered space into powder as it surged over explosively and covered this expanse of the heavens and the earth. The three ancient freaks attacked together, obviously using all their strength. Their lethality was enough to make anyone despair. Perhaps the only way out was to hide in the black boat. However, to Lin Sun's surprise, the skinny man and the woman in purple, who had respectfully let him go first, also attacked at this moment. They attacked Lin Sun from behind. Lin Sun was completely caught in a pincer attack. Unstoppable. Unavoidable. This was the strategy Shui Baoji thought of. She joined forces with Donyang Ting, Tuoba Han, and the others to eliminate Lin Sun at this moment. The reason was simple. Lin Sun had forced her to apologize to Donyang Ting on the way here. As for Tuoba Han and the others, they were also dissatisfied with Lin Sun. They thought that Lin Sun's previous actions had gone too far and ignored their existence. If Shui Baoji and Donyang Ting hadn't taken the initiative to admit defeat, a battle was bound to break out at that time, and the consequences would have been unimaginable. This attack was their revenge. Moreover, they went all out from the start, because they all knew that when dealing with a ruthless person like Lin Sun, they had to eliminate him as soon as they attacked. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble. Unfortunately, they still underestimated Lin Sun. At this moment, Lin Sun, who was deep in the encirclement, had cold eyes and a calm expression, as if he had already expected this. From his body, an indescribable and terrifying aura exploded. Boom! Dazzling Taoist light. Tribulation runes rose and circled around him. Inside his body, Yazi's wrath and battle saint technique operated together. In an instant, Lin Sun, who had been as calm as a cloud, seemed to have turned into a demonic god with a disdainful might. Bang! Bang! With two deafening explosions, the skinny man and the woman in purple coughed up blood and flew backward, almost falling into the surging Styx River. Boom! At the same time, a myriad of fist strikes shot out with all-powerful might, and they shattered all the various attacks that assaulted them into powder. Crack! The surface of a shining purple precious imprint cracked apart, and it was blasted flying. Dong! A white tiger that was conjured from a Taoist technique was directly blasted into a rain of light that filled the sky. Rumble! The other Tao arts and treasures were blasted apart, destroyed, and obliterated by the peerlessly blazing fist force. As soon as he revealed his skills, he dissolved the attacks from all directions. In an instant, Shui Baoji and the others who were originally filled with confidence gasped and almost cried out involuntarily. Before, they had been very vigilant and careful, treating Lin Sun as their number one enemy. But who would have thought that when the battle really started, the other party's battle prowess and vigor completely exceeded their expectations? Too strong, that demonic, godlike attitude caused them to feel a sense of terror. Who was this guy? No one noticed that even the skeleton boatman glanced at Lin Sun at this moment. Do you think I'm too benevolent, that I can let you provoke me as you please? In a calm voice, Lin Sun stepped on the air and rushed forward. In that case, I'll play with you. Boom! His entire body shone. In that instant, a large hand covered the sky, displaying the profound mysteries of the swan and eye imprint, slapping downwards. With a pu sound, Shui Baoji coughed out blood. Even though she blocked this attack, her entire body was still slapped flying, suffering serious injuries. How can you be so strong? She screamed. Tuoba Han and Donyang Ting's scalps were numb. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that there was such a heaven-defying monster among their peers. But before they could think too much, Lin Sun was already charging at them. Go! Tuoba Han let out a long howl. Crack! But at the same time, Lin Sun smashed a bronze mirror treasure that Donyang Ting had taken out with a punch, and his fist force burst forth, leaving a hole in Donyang Ting's chest. This person was ruthless, abandoning his body without hesitation, and his spirit soared into the sky. In the distance, Shwep, Baoji, and Tuoba Hun had already fled far away. A well-planned siege was directly overturned in front of Lin Sun's absolute combat power. It was so powerful that it was a complete mess. Lin Sun didn't give chase, because at this moment, the skeleton boatman unexpectedly spoke. "Young friend, would you like to do me a favor?" His voice was mellow and clear, like the sound of Tao, making one's mind indescribably calm and peaceful. Lin Sun was startled and turned to look at the skeleton boatman, who was standing on the black boat, wearing linen clothes and with green flames burning in his eyes. But in Lin Sun's eyes, what he saw was a middle-aged man with wide sleeves and a wide belt, with a carefree manner and temperament like an immortal. His eyebrows were as black as ink, his eyes as bright as stars, and his lips curled into a smile. As if above the ninth heaven, he gave off an untouchable feeling, as if he didn't belong to this world. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun cupped his hands and said, "Senior, please speak. This lamp is called Wujio. If one day you go to the starry sky ancient path, please use this lamp to guide the wandering ghosts who are lost on the path of Tao." The man took down a dim yellow oil lamp from the bow, and the flickering light made his figure emit an ethereal aura. Lin Sun was stunned. Wandering ghosts who were lost on the path of Tao? He didn't quite understand. The path of Tao is like a boat sailing through the sea of bitterness. If there is no lamp to guide you, how can you know where the road ahead is? The skeleton boatman sighed softly. An indescribable feeling welled up in Lin Sun's heart. Would one get lost in the pursuit of Tao? Yes. The higher the realm, the more one knew the difficulties and dangers of Tao. As long as one pursued it, no one could guarantee that he wouldn't get lost in it. In this regard, Lin Sun had a deep understanding of it. These years of cultivation experience made him have a deeper understanding of the path of Tao. In the end, Lin Sun took over the lamp. Wujio implied that no one could be blamed and no mistakes would be made. This lamp was named Wujio, which meant that there must be a mystery. The path of Tao is unknown, and a lamp will illuminate it. My young friend, you have accumulated karma, and your fate is uncertain. If you encounter an unsolvable dilemma when you become a saint, you can inject a drop of heart blood into this lamp, and there may be a chance to solve it. The skeleton boatman's voice was mellow as he gave advice. Lin Sun was moved. Then he took a deep breath and cupped his hands to thank him. When he raised his head again, the skeleton boatman and the black boat had disappeared, and only the boundless blood river was surging. The path of Tao is unknown, and a lamp will illuminate it. Lin Sun muttered these words in his heart and put away the Wujio lamp. After that, he took a deep breath, discarded all distracting thoughts, and looked towards the distant sky. Blood-colored auspicious clouds converged there, and the nether god altar was faintly visible within them. Swoosh! Lin Sun soared into the sky. In the sky, auspicious clouds were numerous, and all of them were scarlet red in color. The aura that effused out wasn't bloody, and it carried a pure and holy aura instead. When he arrived high in the sky, he noticed that the nether god altar was extremely extraordinary. It was like a small mountain that floated beneath the sky, and it was completely pitch black and flowed with a divine aura. There was a stone table on the altar, and there were many things consecrated on it. All of them were suffused with hazy immortal radiance and chaotic chi, and they were enshrouded by mist, causing it to be impossible to see clearly. But everyone was clearly aware that it was a heaven-defying fortune that had been sealed here for eternity. But in next to no time, Lin Sun was shocked in his heart, because with the altar as the center, there were figures of cultivators standing on the blood-colored auspicious clouds in all directions. All of them were either sitting or standing. There were men and women, and there were even some beings from formidable clans. Even though their appearances were different, their auras were extremely formidable. There were over 100 of them. Lin Sun couldn't help but be slightly shocked. After all, to arrive here, one had to first enter the Nether River restricted area, and then passed through the Nether God Bloodwell, the blood-red underworld soil, the Nether God Cave, the Nether River. This path was filled with countless dangers and difficulties, and ordinary experts would suffer calamity on the way and be unable to arrive here. However, there were over 100 experts in the vicinity of the Nether God altar. Another competitor has arrived. If this continues, then I wonder how many people will enter when the seal on the altar is open tomorrow. A gloomy voice resounded. Lin Sun swept the surroundings with his gaze, yet he didn't notice the source of this voice. However, he didn't mind. Through his observation, he immediately noticed that the experts scattered around the surroundings of the blood-colored, auspicious clouds were far from being able to compare with the experts near the Nether God altar. In other words, the strength of the experts present here would definitely be stronger the closer they were to the Nether God altar. Otherwise, their positions would have probably been occupied a long time ago. The atmosphere here was extremely tense and oppressive. Killing intent suffused the surroundings, and it faintly formed a situation where everyone was vigilant and in confrontation with each other. At the same time, Lin Sun noticed Wang Xing and the others as well. Their positions weren't close to the front nor the back. When they noticed Lin Sun's gaze, their expressions changed indeterminately, and there was hatred and deep fear within them. Besides them, there was also Shweb Baoji, Tuo Bahan, and the others. When they saw Lin Sun, all of their faces were covered in gloominess. Lin Sun directly disregarded all of this. They're just a group of losers, so why should he pay attention to them? Newcomer, I advise you to stay there obediently. There's no place for you here any longer. If you dare walk around randomly, then the fellow Taoists here will probably not allow it. That gloomy voice resounded once more. It drifted indeterminately from left to right, and it caused others to be unable to determine its direction. Obviously, this voice carried hostility towards Lin Sun, and it was sowing discord and making others treat Lin Sun with hostility. Unfortunately, none of the people here were idiots. How could they possibly go against the newcomer Lin Sun just because of a few words? Why are you hiding here? Stand out and speak if you have the balls. Lin Sun's face sank, and his divine sense swept out. Ho ho, this boy is quite arrogant. Have a try if you dare. This time, as soon as the gloomy voice resounded, Lin Sun instantly locked on the opponent. It was a golden-robed man with long and narrow cheeks and pale skin. He was not far from Lin Sun. Do you think I don't dare? I'll kill you first. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed with killing intent, and his figure disappeared out of thin air. At the same time, the golden-robed man was stunned, and a sense of extreme danger surged in his heart. He got goosebumps all over his body and retreated without hesitation, intending to dodge first. Bang! However, at the moment when he moved, a punch broke through the air and smashed his head instantly, causing blood to spurt out. All of a sudden, the nearby strongmen became restless, and their faces changed abruptly with different expressions. P.S. Let me tell you something. I just received a call. Goldfish's grandfather fell to the ground with a cerebral hemorrhage. Now he's in a coma in the hospital. Goldfish and her family are going to the hospital immediately. Chapter 1247. Killed with a single blow. The bloody scene had a strong visual impact. The golden-robed young man who was killed was called Tang LV. He was also a supreme overlord, but now he died on the spot without even being able to block a single punch. As the blood rain fell, Lin Sun stood on the bloody cloud where Tang LV had been. His black eyes were cold and indifferent. However, the way everyone looked at him was completely different now. He was a tough guy. The powerhouses near Lin Sun even unconsciously became vigilant, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Demon God Lin. At this moment, someone recognized Lin Sun, causing a commotion in the field. Many people revealed a look of realization. No wonder he dared to be so domineering. It turned out that he was the legendary Ruthless Man. Most of the powerhouses present had never seen Lin Sun before, but it didn't hinder their understanding of the name Demon God Lin. For a moment, even some top figures began to pay attention and attach importance to Lin Sun, not daring to treat him as a passerby. Shweb Baoji, Tuo Bahan, and others were stunned and dumbfounded. Of course, they also knew Demon God Lin, but they didn't expect that the opponent they hated the most was, at this moment, they all had the urge to cough blood. If they had known this, they definitely wouldn't have treated Lin Sun like that when crossing the Styx River. Unfortunately, it was too late to regret now. As for Wang Xing and others, they didn't even dare to fart at this moment. Although they were forced to admit defeat near the Three Lives Rock, they had already given up the idea of fighting against Lin Sun. They had no choice. They all knew how powerful Demon God Lin was. He wasn't someone they could provoke at all. Of course, if someone jumped out a deal with Lin Sun, they would be happy to see it. Taoism Lin, do you know who Tang LV is? Suddenly, someone spoke with a hint of schadenfreude. Everyone was stunned at first. Then, they seemed to realize something, and their expressions became strange. Lin Sun said indifferently, "It's just a dead man. Why should I care who he is?" His words were very domineering. Many people secretly admired him, as expected of the legendary fearless Demon God Lin. Just this courage alone was enough to make many people feel ashamed of their inferiority. There was also someone who sneered, "Lin Sun, there's no harm in telling you this. This Tang LV is from Ao Lai Nation's Sacred Flame sect, and his grandfather is the high priest of Sacred Flame sect, Tang Mu." As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed slightly. Anyone who understood the Sacred Flame sect would know that this was an extremely difficult place to deal with. They had countless disciples, and all of them were ruthless people who did not fear death. "Even if I'm not as strong as you, I still dare to fight you to the death." If that was all, it wouldn't be enough to strike fear in others. What was truly terrifying was that anyone who was viewed as an enemy by the sect, no matter who it was, would be hunted down until they died. This style of doing things was very similar to the Black Sea Tengu clan, but the difference was that the Sacred Flame sect was a place of sacred seclusion. Its influence, heritage, and power were far above that of the Black Sea Tengu clan. Even among the sacred retreat grounds, the Sacred Flame sect was definitely a colossal existence in terms of power and influence. Generally speaking, no one was willing to provoke the disciples of the Sacred Flame sect because they were like a group of cold-blooded, heartless lunatics. Not only were they ruthless to their enemies, but they were even more ruthless to themselves. If the news that Lin Sun killed Tang LV at this time spread out, he would definitely be targeted by the Sacred Flame sect. When he returned from the Absolute Summit domain, he would probably suffer the endless revenge of the Sacred Flame sect. Other orthodoxies might still be afraid of Lin Sun's potential and power, so they wouldn't lower themselves and care so much about a junior like Lin Sun. But the Sacred Flame sect wouldn't. This orthodoxy even dared to kill sages. Therefore, when everyone came to their senses, they more or less looked at Lin Sun in a different way. It was true that in this Absolute Summit domain, Demon God Lin was unscrupulous and his strength was much stronger than his peers, but it didn't mean that he couldn't be defeated. Even if we take a step back and assume that you, Demon God Lin, are able to leave the Apex region alive, would your enemies let you off? The Sacred Flame sect alone was enough to make him suffer. The Sacred Flame sect. At this moment, Lin Sun remembered that he was besieged by the Sacred Flame sect in the Boundary River. Their target was Lu Kai Wei. But no matter what, the hatred had already been formed at that time. Therefore, when he saw someone use the name of the Sacred Flame sect to intimidate him, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel funny. He glanced at the crowd and said, "Since I entered the ancient Desolation domain, when have I ever been afraid of anyone? If you want to see the fun of me, I'm afraid I'll disappoint you." His voice was powerful and full of arrogance. Suddenly, many strong men in the field looked unnatural. Many people thought of the sensational things Lin Sun had done in the ancient Desolation domain and couldn't help sighing with emotion. Back then, when Demon God Lin first showed his brilliance in the West Hung Boundary, he made a bold statement that he would kill all the black demonic dogs in the world one day, which made him famous. He defeated all the heroes in the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, proved the Tao, and attracted attention from all directions. When he entered the Dongsheng Boundary, He competed with the successors of the ancient orthodoxies, such as the Holy Land of Heaven's Pivot and the Holy Land of Spirit Treasure, which caused a lot of trouble and attracted the attention of the world. Then, he broke into the white jade capital alone and broke many records of Yun Qingbai in the 12 buildings in one day. In a minor tycoon list, he surpassed all others and reached the first place, leading the way. At the shore of the Star-Burial Sea, he killed a group of kings and made waves while talking and laughing. Later, there was even a mysterious saintess who sought justice for Lin Sun. She turned a saint into a beast and made the 6 ancient orthodoxies lose face. All these deeds were accompanied by terror and danger, intertwined with blood and killing. Every time, Lin Sun was not favored, but every time he would survive. How could such an undefeatable demon god be afraid of threats? Junior Brother Wang. He is demon god Lin. In the area closest to the divine netherworld altar, Tantai Lu said with a gloomy face, if he hadn't interfered, that miraculous ancient stone scripture would have belonged to our Tai Taoism. There was hatred and unwillingness in his voice. Beside her, Wang Xuanyu wore a black Taoist robe, and his eyes were calm like an ancient well. He said with a smile, it's just a battle of opportunities. It's not wrong to lose to such a famous and ruthless person. But he was too presumptuous. If we hadn't escaped in time, we would have almost died in his hands. Tantai Lu was a little anxious. What did he mean? Senior brother Wang didn't intend to pursue the matter? Wang Xuanyu still smiled and said indifferently with his hands behind his back, didn't he not die? It shows that demon god Lin still has a bottom line and is not someone who kills innocent people. Tantai Lu was depressed and speechless. Why did it feel like Wang Xuanyu was defending demon god Lin? He said he wants to talk to you face to face. Tantai Lu said with displeasure, he's already bullying us, and you still intend to smooth things over? Wang Xuanyu was stunned, and then he said with a smile, I still say the same thing. In the battle of opportunities, there are bound to be winners and losers. It all depends on one's own ability. After a pause, he changed the topic and said, of course, when the opportunities on the divine netherworld altar appear tomorrow, if demon god Lin wants to compete with me, I will naturally not show mercy. Hearing this, Tantai Lu felt much better. But at this moment, he suddenly noticed that Lin Sun in the distance was looking at him. He was furious at once. What else did this guy want? Immediately, he awkwardly found that he was overthinking. Lin Sun's gaze just swept over him and fell on Wang Xuanyu next to him. This made Tantai Lu depressed again. There was no doubt that in Lin Sun's heart, he was already a defeated opponent, not worthy of attention at all. You are Wang Xuanyu? As soon as Lin Sun spoke, he immediately attracted the attention of the audience. At this time, among the hundreds of experts around the divine netherworld altar, the existence of Wang Xuanyu was undoubtedly the most frightening. The reason was very simple. Wang Xuanyu's combat power was very strong, and not just ordinarily strong. And at this moment, demon god Lin directly called out Wang Xuanyu's name. Something was bound to happen. For a time, everyone had different thoughts and couldn't help but look forward to it. If demon god Lin and Wang Xuanyu had a conflict, this would be a battle between two tigers. It might even create some opportunities for them to fish in troubled waters. That's me. Wang Xuanyu cupped his hands in obeisance, polite and elegant. He was worthy of being the leading figure among the descendants of Tai Taoism. This kind of demeanor alone made many people's eyes light up. Let me tell you one thing. Lin Sun also smiled. He could see that under Wang Xuanyu's gentle and polite appearance, there was a pride far beyond ordinary. Brother Lin, please speak your mind. Wang Xuanyu's expression was neither happy nor sad, and his attitude was neither humble nor arrogant, gentle and calm. It's very simple. No matter who the fortune here belongs to, I want to take this opportunity to, when Lin Sun said this, everyone's curiosity was suddenly aroused, and they pricked up their ears. Rob, when they heard these 3 words, everyone's expression suddenly became very interesting. Many people almost choked and coughed violently. Robbing someone? Demon god Lin was too straightforward, wasn't he? Even Wang Xuanyu was stunned and felt a little unprepared. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Brother Lin, what do you mean?" He wasn't angry, nor was he embarrassed. He just looked like he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Such self-restraint was really amazing. Lin Sun smiled slightly and said, "I have no choice. My friend was robbed by you and lost a congenital Taoist fire. How can I be indifferent?" It turned out that he was standing up for his friend. Many people suddenly understood. Some people were secretly shocked that Wang Xuanyu had robbed a congenital Taoist fire. It turns out to be about this. Wang Xuanyu also remembered and couldn't help laughing. "Brother Lin, it's just a fight for opportunities. How is a robbery? I didn't kill you at that time. You must be very clear about this." Lin Sun nodded. "Yes, I agree with this very much. So when I rob, I only rob and don't kill. If you don't believe me, you can ask Tantai Lu." Being called out by Lin Sun in full view of the public, Tantai Lu wanted to stuff his head into a crack in the ground. His face was gloomy. How could he refute Lin Sun since he had been completely defeated? Wang Xuanyu still looked calm and even smiled slightly, saying, "Brother Lin, if that's the case, why don't we wait for the creation of this place to come out, and then we'll see who's stronger." Lin Sun nodded. "Okay." In an instant, a flash of light flashed in Wang Xuanyu's eyes, as if there were yin and yang fishes flashing in them. Looking at Lin Sun in the distance quietly, he smiled without saying a word. "P.S. Thank you for your concern. The old man fell down the day before yesterday, but he didn't tell his family in time. The old man joined the army when he was in his teens and developed a body of iron. No matter what happened, he was never willing to trouble others, including his own children. He always carried everything by himself, and this time was the same. However, he was in his 70s after all, and now he had a cerebral hemorrhage. His condition was serious, and he was still in a critical period. Alas, let's not talk about it. As for the update, I may have to go to the hospital every day recently. If the update is not stable, please forgive me." Chapter 1248. Everyone became excited. Be it Demon God Lin or Wang Xuanyu, they were enough to make the powerhouses present fearful. But now, the two were in conflict. It could be foreseen that when the good fortune descended and the two tigers fought, it would definitely provide opportunities for other powerhouses. Lin Sun and Wang Xuanyu were well aware of this, but they did not care. Powerhouses who had reached their level had long cultivated an invincible momentum. How could they be disturbed by a confrontation? "What are you doing?" someone exclaimed, sensing that Lin Sun had moved and was walking towards him. "Just passing by. No need to be nervous." Lin Sun glanced at him and stepped forward. That person tensed up, fearing that Lin Sun would kill him and take his position. Unfortunately, he was overthinking. Lin Sun was really just passing by. Seeing this, the other powerhouses' eyes flickered. Obviously, Demon God Lin was unwilling to stay on the periphery and wanted to approach the Shunming altar, and this would definitely occupy the positions of others. Along the way, some powerhouses who thought they were no match for Lin Sun resisted the repulsion in their hearts and took the initiative to avoid him, making way for Lin Sun. Suddenly, Lin Sun noticed that Qi Yunfeng, the successor of Xianming Divine Mansion, was not far away. At the same time, Qi Yunfeng transmitted his voice. "Brother Lin, you came at the right time. When the battle for the good fortune begins, I will fully support you." Lin Sun said with a faint smile. "Brother Qi, didn't you say that we can get more opportunities to fight for the good fortune if we act separately?" Qi Yunfeng looked a little uncomfortable, but he still said with a smile, "The current situation is not suitable for us to fight separately. At least if I take action, I will definitely be able to help Brother Lin restrain some of the powerhouses of Tai Taoism." Lin Sun did not intend to pursue the matter. In any case, his relationship with Qi Yunfeng had not reached the point of turning against each other. "Yin Shui and Jean Lucio did not come with you?" he asked. Qi Yunfeng shook his head. "The quota for the Ming ship is limited. They gave up this opportunity." Lin Sun sneered in his heart. Who would give up such a great fortune? Qi Yunfeng was definitely lying. He and evildoer Yin Shui were both from the profound Nether Divine Estate, but Gu Yunfeng's status was obviously much higher. So, even if Yin Shui and evildoer Yin Shui were unwilling in their hearts, they had to give this opportunity to Gu Yinfeng. Brother Yin, you should think about it carefully. If you're on the same side as me, I'm afraid you'll be suppressed by many enemies. After saying this, Lin Sun walked forward. Qi Yinfeng was stunned, his expression flickering indeterminately. At first, when Lin Sun arrived, the reason why he didn't greet Lin Sun the first time was that he was worried that standing with Lin Sun would cause a lot of trouble for himself. Later, when Lin Sun burst out his power and killed Tang LV, the future leader of the Sacred Fire sect, which deterred the whole audience and even made Wang Xuanyu not dare to underestimate him, Qi Yinfeng made a decision to go with Lin Sun. But it was embarrassing that Lin Sun seemed to be very uninterested in his bravery. Qi Yinfeng sighed in his heart. He naturally knew the reason. When he first entered the underworld god cave, he'd made the decision to split up with Lin Sun and the others, and this was equivalent to severing their partnership with Lin Sun. Or rather, the cracks had already appeared at that time. Moreover, it was caused by him. At this moment, Lin Sun revealed such a cold attitude. Although it made Qi Yinfeng unhappy, he couldn't blame anyone. This was his own choice. For a moment, Qi Yinfeng couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. He knew that even if he wanted to repair his relationship with Lin Sun now, it was probably impossible. Even if the broken porcelain bottle was repaired, those scars were destined to not be completely erased. Lin Sun encountered an obstacle in front of the blood-colored auspicious cloud that was closest to the divine nether altar. Demon God Lin, the positions have already been determined. You're late. Don't tell me you intend to snatch it by force. Standing, there was an extremely valiant-looking man in silver armor. He had a single horn on his forehead and a pair of silver wings on his back. The ancient freak of the Ho clan, Hua Tianhai. His voice was indifferent and cold, and his eyes were bursting with battle intent. There were a total of 12 blood-colored auspicious clouds around the divine nether altar. Those who could stand on them were all experts among experts. Hua Tianhai was indeed very powerful. He'd already stepped into the first tribulation of longevity. For a moment, everyone's eyes were focused on him. Lin Sun said, "We'll decide based on strength. If I win, you step aside. If I lose, I'll leave." Hua Tianhai's expression was cold. "What if I don't agree?" Lin Sun smiled. "Then don't blame me for snatching it by force." Hua Tianhai's face darkened, and a frightening cold light burst out his eyes. He said, "You really think you're somebody. If it weren't for the fact that I don't want any twists and turns to happen before fighting for the good fortune, I'd be the first to kill you just because of your arrogant attitude." Lin Sun couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense. Fight or not, you. Hua Tianhai was furious. A great battle was about to break out, but unexpectedly, Hu Tianhai backed down at this moment. With a livid face, he took the initiative to dodge. The surroundings instantly became deathly silent. Everyone was shocked. Hua Tianhai's retreat made them have a new understanding of Lin Sun's power. Lin Sun frowned, but he didn't say anything in the end. The bird that sticks out gets shot. The more arrogant you are, the more miserable your death will be. Hua Tianhai sneered inwardly. Alas, being in the limelight now will definitely arouse the fear of others. Why bother? In the distance, Qi Yinfeng sighed inwardly. At this point, he had completely extinguished the idea of advancing and retreating together with Lin Sun. When the good fortune came and a great battle broke out, who would everyone be most afraid of? There was no need to guess. It had to be Lin Sun. And because of this, it was the easiest for him to become the target of everyone. There was a moment of silence. What was strange was that in the following period of time, there were no more experts who came. Only Lin Sun knew that the lamp of no blame had fallen into his hands. The skeleton boatman could no longer steer the boat to carry people. He turned his gaze to the altar hall. There was a stone table there, on which were offerings. The offerings were all covered in magnificent immortal light and chaotic aura. It was impossible to see them clearly. Lin Sun knew that this was the power of the seal. As long as the seal was not lifted, no one could seize the offerings. Time passed by slowly. The next morning, above the altar, the colorful immortal light and chaotic aura began to burst inch by inch like bubbles. The cultivators who had been waiting for a long time were all shocked. Their gazes locked onto the altar in unison. Every one of them exuded a terrifying aura. They were all ready. "It's coming," someone murmured. Boom! Suddenly, before the seal was completely lifted, someone made a move. He leaped into the air and reached for the stone table above the altar. However, an unbelievable scene happened. The altar was not large, but the person's figure suddenly shrunk to the size of a dust particle. In comparison, the stone table above the altar was even taller than a sacred mountain. As a result, the person's attack missed. The Sumeru technique. Everyone's pupils shrank. This was the power of rules. The altar looked like it was only the size of a small mountain, but it was actually enormous. Charge! The others couldn't help but charge forward. The first to move were naturally the group of cultivators closest to the altar. They had the geographical advantage and were the first to charge forward. Lin Sun was among them. "My God, are these the legendary treasures?" Someone exclaimed. On the altar, the offerings on the stone table gradually revealed themselves. There were scrolls, bronze cauldrons, precious medicines, and beast skins. All of them exuded a divine aura. An opportunity that had been sealed for thousands of years had appeared in the world at this moment. All of a sudden, everyone's eyes turned red. They seemed to have gone mad as they charged forward with all their might. Their auras were violent and ferocious. This was a group of kings. How could their power be ordinary? This item is extremely similar to the legendary cauldron of mixed origin. This must be a holy treasure. Someone roared and started to fight over a treasure. Lin Sun also noticed this item. It was indeed miraculous and extraordinary. It overflowed with misty divine light and was crystal clear. It exuded a grand and holy aura. High-grade divine medicine. It's very likely that it contains a profound meaning of the Great Way. Someone exclaimed. It was a crimson coral with a purple sun hanging above it. It shone brightly. Upon closer inspection, the purple sun was clearly a divine fruit. An intense battle erupted. A group of strong people rushed forward to compete for it. The battle also continued. It was extremely heated. Lin Sun was the first group of strong people to set out. As soon as he set out, he activated the ice dragon steps with the profound meaning of the real dragon. His speed was so fast that it was like teleportation. However, there was Sumeru law above the altar. It seemed narrow, but in fact it was like a world. Especially the stone table. It was as lofty as a deep mountain. Even with Lin Sun's speed, it took him more than 10 breaths to reach the top of the stone table. However, there were only 5 or 6 people who could reach the top of the stone table like him. Among them, there was Wang Xuanyu of Tai Taoism. Whoosh! Lin Sun didn't care about others. At first glance, he fixed his eyes on an ancient scripture made of animal skin. He immediately displayed the hegemonic prohibition and extracted it from the air. However, to his astonishment, the beast skin scripture seemed as if it had a mind of its own, and it flashed and appeared at another place. Lin Sun took a deep breath and spread his divine sense. He suddenly locked on the ancient scripture made of animal skin. After a brief examination, his eyelids suddenly twitched. Fake! This ancient scripture, made of animal skin, was just an illusory object. It didn't exist at all. Damn it! It's actually an illusory treasure. At the same time, there was a sound of cursing. In the distance, a strong man was swearing at the divine medicine whose fruit was like a purple sun. In an instant, the faces of many strong people who rushed over changed. Could it be that the heaven-defying creation that had been sealed for thousands of years was a shocking hoax? Go! Who dares to stop me? In the distance, there were more strong people rushing over. They didn't know what was going on. At this moment, they were all full of excitement and killing intent to seize the good fortune. No, there are real items here. Suddenly, Lin Sun noticed that Wang Xuanyu had ingested a goose egg-sized crimson pearl with raging divine flames. Chapter 1249. In Wang Xuanyu's voice, there was vigilance, warning, and a hint of complacency. because he had snatched a treasure before Lin Sun did. However, before Lin Sun could speak, he let out a strange cry and threw something out. It was the fiery red bead that he had just acquired. Boom! Just as he waved his hand, the fiery red bead exploded with a loud bang. Wang Xuanyu's face was immediately covered with dust, and he staggered back. His eyebrows and hair were all burnt, and he looked extremely embarrassed. Lin Sun was stunned at first, and then he almost couldn't help laughing. Just now this guy was showing off, and now he suffered a disaster. But immediately, Lin Sun realized that something was wrong, because at this time, all the treasures acquired by the strong who rushed over were either illusory, or, like the fiery red bead, they produced terrible destructive power and caused injuries to many strong people. It was even to the extent that someone was directly blasted into a bloody mess. It was an incomparably miserable sight. In the field, there was an uproar, and everyone was shocked and angry. What was going on? How could it become like this if it wasn't a heaven-defying fortune that had been sealed for thousands of years? It's fate. Wang Xuanyu gritted his teeth, and his face was gloomy. Before, he had been calm and gentle, polite, and elegant, but at this time, he was a little flustered and exasperated. Whoosh! Lin Sun was even more decisive. He retreated without hesitation and returned to the distance. He sensed danger. No one knew the origin of this divine netherworld altar. The reason why it was recognized that a heaven-defying fortune was sealed here was just speculation from everyone, and it couldn't be taken seriously. Seeing Lin Sun retreat, many people trembled in their hearts and hesitated. They were unwilling to leave like this. But some people chose to retreat. This place was very strange. The treasures derived were all extremely tempting, such as the white jade cauldron and the purple sun-like divine medicine. But it had been proved that they were illusory. All of this was like a trap, which made people's hair stand on end. Boom! Suddenly, someone charged over from the sky with a dazzling halberd in his hand, and it slashed down at Lin Sun with a tremendous force and a myriad of dazzling lights of the Tao. Want to leave? Impossible. It was the ancient freak Hua Tianhai of the tiger centipede lineage. Previously, he was forced to give up his position by Lin Sun, so he held a grudge against Lin Sun. Originally, he planned to take the opportunity to retaliate against Lin Sun when fighting for the fortune. Unexpectedly, the situation was completely different. At this time, seeing Lin Sun trying to escape, he chose to take action without hesitation. Of course, it was not a life-and-death fight, but to drag Lin Sun here and not let him escape. In this way, even if something big happened next, Lin Sun could be dragged into it. His intentions could not be said to not be vicious. Lin Sun's cold eyes flashed, and he suddenly punched out. Boom! Amidst the terrifying sounds of collision, the dazzling halberd wailed. Hua Tianhai was sent flying back more than 100 feet. He staggered and almost coughed up blood. Not bad. No wonder you dare to come here. This surprised Lin Sun a little. The power of his punch couldn't be blocked by anyone. However, when these words entered into Hua Tianhai's ears, it was like a great ridicule, and it caused his face to flush red while his hair stood on end from rage. But Lin Sun was too lazy to pay attention to him and rushed forward decisively. This place was so weird that he felt a little uneasy. Friend, since you are here, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Suddenly, a bloody light fell and blocked Lin Sun's way. It turned into an extremely handsome man in a bloody robe. He was extremely special. His eyes were like a pair of clear blood diamonds. His long bloody hair fell to his waist, and his figure was extremely tall and straight. Standing there casually, his figure was like a bloody river rolling, looming, with an invisible momentum that made people's hearts palpitate. Everyone, please stop fighting. I'm willing to sit down and discuss with you. At the same time, in other areas, a bloody figure appeared in front of every strong man. They all looked the same as the scarlet-robed man, and even their breath was the same. In an instant, there was a dead silence in the field, and everyone's face suddenly changed. No one had seen this scarlet-robed man before. Who was he? The underworld is my territory, and the place where you stand is where I sleep." In an instant, hundreds of scarlet-robed men spoke at the same time. Their voices were low and deep, with a unique magnetism that went straight to people's hearts. He was like a single person, but he had the power to transform into thousands of people. Under the surprised and doubtful gazes of everyone, the scarlet-robed man's lips curved into an evil smile, and he said with a smile, "You can call me Dark Child." Dark Child. It was just 2 words, but it caused everyone's heart to tremble. Without a sound, the scarlet-robed figures turned into a rain of light, and they converged together to transform into a person that stood upright on the stone table. He stretched himself and said slowly, "Everyone, don't be afraid. I've been sleeping for tens of thousands of years, and I'm extremely fortunate to be able to see all of you when I wake up for the first time. I naturally won't kill anyone." His blood-red eyes were like diamonds, and the expressions of all the strong men who were swept by him changed indeterminately. They had gone through untold hardships and risked their lives to arrive here with great difficulty. Who would have thought that the so-called heaven-defying fortune would be gone, and they would see an extremely strange dark child instead? This caused everyone's mood to become very bad. "What's with those treasures just now?" someone asked coldly. The dark child said, "Oh." With a flip of his hand, he withdrew a blood-red bronze pot that emitted a gorgeous rain of light that seemed like chaos. And he said, "Those treasures are sealed within my netherworld emperor god refinement pot." What fellow Taoist saw earlier was only the phenomenon revealed by those treasures. His fingers were slender and fair, and the bronze pot in his palm flowed with light and was enshrouded in chaotic mist. It seemed extremely mysterious, and it instantly attracted the attention of everyone present. The Netherworld Emperor Smelting God Pot. This was definitely an extraordinary treasure. What was even more exciting was that if what Darkchild said was true, all the treasures they had seen before were now sealed in this pot. So, the so-called heaven-defying fortune here doesn't exist at all. Suddenly, Wang Xuanyu spoke, and his expression had recovered its calmness. Darkchild smiled slightly. "The fortune is all controlled by me, so how can I say it doesn't exist? I know that all of you have come to find fortune. Since that's the case, please don't be impatient and sit down to talk." He waved his sleeve, and a blood-red cloud cushion appeared in front of every strong man. "Everyone, please." He extended his hand to greet them. Everyone looked at each other and hesitated. "In that case, I have a lot of questions to discuss with you." Wang Xuanyu was the first to sit down, with a calm and unrestrained manner. Darkchild nodded with a smile. "You have the Tai treasure pupil and great luck. Your future is absolutely limitless." Wang Xuanyu cupped his hands. "You flatter me." Seeing this, the others sat down one after another. They also wanted to know some answers and the truth. "Sorry, I have to go first." Lin Sun's sudden words caused a commotion in the field, and everyone looked at him. Darkchild was stunned and said, "Are you afraid that I have bad intentions? You can rest assured that I just woke up from a deep sleep today. I just want to chat with you." Lin Sun said, "I have something to do. I don't have time to accompany you." Then he was about to leave. Darkchild's bloody eyes flashed, and he said with a smile, "My friend, if you stay, I can give this to you." As soon as he finished speaking, a blood coral appeared in the void, with a dazzling purple sun-like fruit hanging on its branch. Everyone's eyes suddenly shrank. They were sure that this divine medicine was not an illusion. For a moment, many people regretted secretly. If they had known this, they should have learned from Lin Sun and played hard to get. To everyone's surprise, Lin Sun still refused without hesitation. Darkchild's smile disappeared, and he said, "My friend, I can see that your combat power is very good. How about this? In addition to this purple sun ming fruit, I will give you another thing." With a buzz, an ancient book made of animal skin appeared, exuding an obscure and vast aura. As soon as it appeared in the void, a sound like the chanting of Sanskrit drifted out. It was like the chanting of saints. There was another commotion in the field, and many people's eyes were red. At this moment, They were finally sure that what Darkchild said just now was not false. All the fortunes here were in his hands. This ancient book was written by a great saint of the underworld. It contains all kinds of insights and experiences that the great saint obtained while seeking for longevity. As soon as Darkchild said this, some strong people couldn't help but gasp. How could a book written by a great saint be ordinary? Moreover, it was related to the cultivation experience and mysteries of the path to longevity. This was an irresistible temptation for any King Realm expert. Unexpectedly, Lin Sun still refused, and he was very rude. Could it be that you think you can make me change my mind with just these things? One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. Others might covet the preciousness and rarity of such fortunes, but Lin Sun was more and more aware that something was wrong. However, his attitude caused quite a few people to be astounded. This fiend god Lin is too pretentious. That's an ancient scripture and a divine herb we're talking about. Why is there a need to put on such an unapproachable attitude? Lin Sun, Darkchild has good intentions, but you refused him time and time again. Aren't you being a little unreasonable? Hua Tianhai said coldly. Or perhaps you don't take Darkchild seriously at all? Lin Sun's black eyes flashed with killing intent, and then his figure disappeared into thin air. Shit! Hua Tianhai's expression changed abruptly. He was just about to stand up when a dazzling fist energy tore through the air and smashed towards him. Crack! Although Hua Tianhai managed to block the attack in his haste, the bones in his arm were instantly fractured and blood flowed from his wound. He was sent flying. How dare you? He roared. Not only him, but also the others present didn't expect that Lin Sun would attack without any warning. Puff! A flash of light flashed, and before Hua Tianhai's roar died down, his neck was cut off. This was the power of impermanence chop. Before, Lin Sun didn't bother to care about this person at all. Who would have thought that this person would repeatedly target him? How could he tolerate this? Others might think that he would be afraid of the so-called Darkchild and dare not act recklessly at this moment. Chapter 1250. Bang! First, Hua Tianhai's head fell to the ground and blood splashed. Then, Hua Tianhai's body fell to the ground. It became quiet for a while, and an indescribable feeling of horror filled the hearts of all the strong people present. Hua Tianhai was an ancient freak of the stalwart tiger clan with extremely powerful combat power. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to occupy the front position in front of the divine hell altar. But now, in the blink of an eye, he was killed by Devil Lin. This bloody scene immediately shocked everyone present. Even Wang Xing, Shui Baoji, Tuoba Han, and others who had a grudge against Lin Sun looked uncertain at this moment. The more they knew about Lin Sun, the more they realized how terrible this young man was. Wang Xuanyu narrowed his eyes and then smiled. His eyes were intriguing. In this silence, Ming Child, who was dressed in a blood-red robe and had an extraordinary bearing, clapped his hands and praised. Amazing. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed that there is such a person in the world. Applause and praise broke the silence, but made the atmosphere a little strange. Hua Tianhai was dead, but now no one cared about him. Even Ming Child directly ignored his death, and his words were full of praise for Lin Sun. There are many things in this world that you can't believe. Why make such a fuss? Lin Sun said coldly. His words were full of sarcasm. Unexpectedly, Ming Child didn't take it seriously. Instead, he laughed and said with emotion, "What you said is true. I have been sleeping for tens of thousands of years, and the current affairs are already beyond my understanding. That's why I have many questions to ask you." Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. This guy was very shrewd. "My fellow practitioner, if you stay, I promise that in addition to this ancient scripture and a divine medicine, there will be other good fortune. What do you think?" The underworld child spoke in an extremely sincere and cordial manner. This made other strong people feel a little unbalanced. Why could Lin Sun receive such treatment, while they could only watch? "Your Highness, isn't it a little unfair for you to do this?" Someone frowned and said. Others also spoke one after another. Ming Child laughed. Don't worry, everyone. Anyone who chooses to stay will have a chance to obtain good fortune. As soon as these words came out, everyone felt much better. But some people didn't believe it, such as Wang Xuanyu. He frowned and said with a puzzled expression, just a single sentence is enough to make us unable to see any sincerity. Moreover, it's just a chat. Why does fellow Taoist need to use opportunities and fortune as bait to make us stay? Wang Xuanyu had pointed out the crux of the problem. That's right, why should I stay? Just for chat? Wang Xuanyu looked calm and said leisurely, if I say something rude again, aren't you worried that we'll attack together and take away your good fortune? His words caused the atmosphere to change, and the eyes of many experts flickered. Ming Zi's scarlet-red eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this, and he went silent for a moment before he suddenly sighed faintly and said, looks like it's very difficult to move all of you with mere words. Whoosh! His figure soared into the sky, and his blood-red hair danced wildly in the wind. A terrifying and boundless power spread from his body. Many people held their breaths, and their expressions changed slightly. And a top figure like Wang Xuanyu's expression also became cold. Clatter, Ming Zi waved his sleeves, and treasures emerged one after another. They were shining brilliantly and exuded an amazing aura. There were ancient beast skin scriptures, mysterious jade cauldrons, divine medicines, and other items. All of a sudden, the treasure light gathered and attracted everyone's attention. This is my sincerity. Ming Zi's voice was low and had a unique magnetism. Fellow Taoists who choose to stay can get one of these treasures. For a moment, many people's breathing became rapid. Of course, if you have bad intentions and want to rob me with your strength, you can do it now. Ming Zi's blood-red eyes swept across the audience like lightning. Suddenly, some of the restless experts felt a chill in their hearts and restrained the impulse to make a move. Are there any other conditions for choosing to stay? Someone asked. The underworld child smiled and said, that's right. Now that I have come into being, I am alone. I wish to gather a group of like-minded subordinates to conquer the world together. Since all of you were able to reach this place after experiencing hardships and dangers, your strength is naturally outstanding among your peers. You're naturally qualified to be used by me. There was a kind of domineering arrogance in these words. It seemed that if they could follow him and serve him, it would be a rare and incomparable honor. But for the experts present, these words seemed very harsh and made their faces gloomy. Among them, which one of them was not a peerless existence? There was no lack of ancient freaks, and each of them had their own pride. Under such circumstances, who would be willing to be under someone else? It turns out that this is your real intention. Wang Xuanyu stood up with a touch of coldness between his eyebrows. In the distance, Lin Sun also sneered in his heart. Sure enough, he had other plans. Of course, some people were very tempted by the conditions put forward by Ming Zi. They could get opportunities and join Ming Zi's camp. The temptation was not ordinary. Of course, the premise was that Ming Zi must have enough strength to be recognized by them. Everyone, do you know what it means to follow me? The nether child's clothes fluttered with the wind, and he revealed a haughty and arrogant aura that shot into the sky. Since the ancient times, I've been sleeping in the upper 9 realms, and the secrets, fortuitous encounters, and resources I possess are far from what all of you can understand. Now, I can only tell you that this time, the subordinates who follow me will have the opportunity to become peerless saints in the future. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. Peerless saints becoming kings was already a miracle enough to attract everyone's attention. But now, Ming Zi suddenly threw out an opportunity to peerless saints, who could not be moved. Of course, it is too early to say whether it is for me or for everyone present. Ming Zi put his hands behind his back and looked down at the crowd in the void, saying, now, those who follow me can get opportunities, get my guidance, and work with me to seek the great way. The audience was restless and had different expressions. Quite a number of people had been completely convinced. But Lin Sun was not among them. After all, it was nothing more than a means to tempt them with benefits and take in subordinates to work for him. What if we want to leave? Wang Xuanyu said indifferently. Obviously, he was not overwhelmed by the temptation. Of course, it's not impossible to leave. Mingzi looked at Wang Xuanyu, and his expression had become a little cold. I have never disdained to force others to do things that they are unwilling to do. But you have obtained a lot of opportunities in this underworld before. This underworld is my territory. If you just leave like this, isn't it a little unreasonable? Nonsense, Wang Xuanyu said coldly. Just because of your words, this underworld is your territory? You're really arrogant. Why don't you say that this absolute domain is also yours? As soon as these words came out, Lin Sun couldn't help but look at Wang Xuanyu in a different light. Of course, the tribulation that should be given to him would not change because of this. However, Wang Xuanyu's next words made Lin Sun speechless for a while. Brother Lin, as you can see, if you want to leave today, you must first pass the test of His Highness Mingzi, who is very arrogant. Should we go in and out together? Wang Xuanyu looked at Lin Sun with a sincere face. Lin Sun almost couldn't help but roll his eyes. Was he familiar with him? No, I think it's better to go our separate ways. Lin Sun refused flatly. If he cooperated with Wang Xuanyu and went in and out together, wouldn't it be very difficult to deal with him in the future? At this moment, Ming Zi said coldly, "No need to be so troublesome. Whoever can block 3 of my moves, I promise I won't stop you from leaving." Everyone was shocked. 3 moves? How powerful and conceited was this Ming Zi? How dare he say such words? Brother Lin, I feel that he is more arrogant than you. Can you bear it? Wang Xuanyu sighed. This guy put on a friendly look at this moment, which made Lin Sun speechless for a while and said, "You'd better worry about yourself." Wang Xuanyu didn't take it seriously and said with a smile, "It seems that I can only try the ability of His Highness Ming Zi first." After that, he stretched out his figure and floated up, standing on the void. A pair of strange symbols appeared in his eyes and turned into yin and yang fish. In an instant, he seemed to turn into another person, emitting a fierce aura. This was the power that could only be honed by killing for a long time, which made people's hearts tremble. Come on, let me see how capable you are that you dare to be so arrogant. Wang Xuanyu opened his mouth, his voice sonorous and powerful. All eyes suddenly locked on him. If Wang Xuanyu blocked 3 moves from the opponent, there was no doubt that it was tantamount to breaking Ming Zi's arrogant words. At that time, Ming Zi would be besieged for the first time, not to mention accepting subordinates. But if Wang Xuanyu couldn't block it, it could prove the strength of Ming Zi. It was believed that in this way, many people would seriously consider whether to rely on him. You have the supreme treasure pupil, and it is rare that you have become a peerless king. I really don't want to embarrass you. If you change your mind now, I am willing, Ming Zi sighed softly. Please. Wang Xuanyu's words were concise and comprehensive. Darkchild's blood-red eyes flickered as he stared at Wang Xuanyu for a while and nodded, "Fine, as you wish." Boom. As soon as his voice fell, Ming Zi's figure flashed like a bloody rainbow, piercing the void and rushing out at an incredible speed. At the same moment, he stretched out a slender white palm and pressed it out fiercely, like the hand of the nether god, appearing inadvertently to harvest the souls of the dead. It was an extremely simple and casual blow, but made the scalp of everyone present numb. This blow was very strong. As his opponent, Wang Xuanyu felt it particularly strongly. His expression became extremely serious, and a pair of strange symbols burst out of his eyes, intertwining in the void and making a sonorous sound. Whoosh! A ray of black and white light shot out. Tai treasure light. However, Lin Sun had no time to pay attention to this shocking duel at the moment. Chapter 12:51. It was this bird again. Lin Sun was stunned and surprised. It seemed that every time he saw this guy, there must be something wrong. Hush! In the distance, the big black bird raised his claws and shushed Lin Sun. Then he put the black pot on his head in an extremely wretched manner. In an instant, its figure disappeared. My little friend, The origin of this Ming child is not simple. His status is roughly the same as that of the ancient Buddha of the earthly temple. However, this Ming child is more extraordinary. His grandfather was a mighty figure on the starry sky ancient path, a ruthless man who could kill a saint. The big black bird transmitted his voice with a hint of slyness. Do you know why he can sleep in this absolute domain? It's because of the smelting god pot in his hand. Speaking of this, Lin Sun was keenly aware of the sound of swallowing saliva. There was no need to guess that this bird was eyeing the smelting god pot in Ming child's hand. Well, my little friend, if you do me a favor and beat this Ming child down, I will tell you a big secret, which will make you happy. How about it? The big black bird made a suggestion. At this time, there was a thunderous roar in the field. Wang Xuanyu staggered back a few steps in the void. On the other hand, Ming child's momentum was like a rainbow, and he did not take a step back. This caused an uproar in the audience, and all the strong people were moved. In the first move, Wang Xuanyu was obviously at a disadvantage. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed, recalling the scene of the battle between Ming child and Wang Xuanyu in his mind, and said casually, "I'm not interested." The large black bird wasn't dispirited in the slightest, and it continued to tempt Chen Shi. "Young brother, there are many treasures in the nether child's possession, and all of them were left behind for him by his grandfather. Every single one of them is a precious treasure that's rare in the world. Are you not moved at all?" In the field, the battle broke out again. Wang Xuanyu's expression was obviously more serious, and he began to use his full strength. As for Ming Zi, he was also using his ultimate move. In Lin Sun's eyes, the combat power of these two people was even stronger than that of Wu Lingdao, the 13th prince of Golden Crow. "I'm not tempted," Lin Sun said absent-mindedly. The big black bird was a little exasperated and cried. "You really don't want to help?" Lin Sun said, "I can help, but I have a condition." The big black bird gnashed his teeth. "I know you won't release the eagle until you see the rabbit." Lin Sun said, "You owe me one." The large black bird was startled at first, but then it readily agreed. "Deal," Lin Sun said faintly. "If you dare to act shamelessly, don't blame me for handing over the Dharma scripture and the Bodhi wood to Ksitigarbha temple." The big black bird immediately cursed in agitation, but Lin Sun ignored it directly. In the end, the big black bird compromised and agreed. Of course, it knew that it was not easy to owe a favor. Lin Sun immediately smiled. The big black bird was full of secrets, especially regarding Holy Monk Du Ji and the Black Phoenix Divine Empress. It definitely knew everything. In the future, if he really had to fight against the great hidden temple, he would have to tie this big black bird to his chariot. Boom! In the arena, the second move had already separated. The dark child retreated several steps. His body swayed slightly, but he wasn't injured. On the opposite side, Wang Xuanyu coughed up blood. The surroundings were deathly silent. Wang Xuanyu, a legendary figure at the pinnacle of this generation, with his current combat power. Among everyone present, he could be said to be second to none. But now, in the battle against the Dark Child, he had suffered consecutive defeats. This could only prove one thing. The foundation and strength of the Dark Child were obviously stronger than that of Wang Xuanyu. It's worthy of the 10 Directions meditation scripture inherited by the Emperor of the Underworld. Once it breaks out, it can double its combat power in a short period of time. If it is a protracted battle, Wang Xuanyu may be the opponent of the Dark Child. What a pity. The big black bird sighed with emotion. The news revealed in the words made Lin Sun's heart shudder. Erupting with double combat strength in a short period of time was a cultivation technique that achieved the same result as the fury of Yazi. My fellow practitioner, if you stop now, I am willing to give you another chance. In the void, the voice of the Dark Child was low and full of conceit. Cut the crap. Although Wang Xuanyu's face was pale, there was determination between his eyebrows. The momentum emitted from his body became more and more powerful, like a peerless sword, shining in the sky. The look of the Dark Child became colder and colder. "I forgot to tell you one thing. This is the place where I sleep." Although the power of rules covered here is not controlled by me, it can be used by me. If I want to defeat you, one move is enough." His words changed the faces of the audience. Everyone felt uneasy. They didn't expect that the Dark Child had such a trump card. Even Lin Sun was awestruck. If this was the case, not to mention Wang Xuanyu, even he might not be able to win. Boom! At this time, the Dark Child attacked. A blood river rose into the sky, as if coming from the ninth heaven, exuding an obscure and frightening aura. He had seen that Wang Xuanyu was doomed to be useless to him, and a strong killing intent had arisen in his heart. Chop! Wang Xuanyu took a deep breath. His body was like a sword, and his intent was like a sword. However, before this blow was made, his whole body was covered by a black pot. At the same time, the figure of the big black bird appeared and shouted, "Boy, it's up to you." Lin Sun cursed in his heart. The bird didn't tell him in advance when he attacked, but it was too late to think about it. Whoosh! He rose into the air and confronted the Dark Child. "I'll fight with you." Ming Child's attack had missed, and he was already caught off guard. Before he could recover from his shock, Lin Sun had already charged over, and his peerlessly handsome face instantly darkened. "Stubborn, do you really think I don't dare to kill you?" With a roar, he waved his sleeves, and a rain of blood fell from the sky. The rainbows intertwined and turned into a huge cage, descending. This blow was much stronger than the one he had just fought with Wang Xuanyu. Vaguely, there was also the aura of the rules of heaven and earth. Just looking at the bloody cage gave people a sense of helplessness, that there was nowhere to escape and nowhere to hide. Lin Sun took a deep breath, and his eyes flashed with a touch of determination. Buzz! The broken blade swept out, white as snow, and a clear sound resounded between heaven and earth. Impermanence and indefinite, deducing the change of the great way. Impermanence. Chop! The broken blade swept through the air. Everyone only felt a tingling in front of their eyes, and a touch of amazement uncontrollably emerged in their minds. They were completely shocked. What kind of chop was this? It involved the change of the great way, and it contained great horror. Boom! In the void, the bloody cage that enveloped Lin Sun was suddenly cut into two halves, and the bloody rain of light swept across the void on both sides. In the distance, the Dark Child was horrified, and his face suddenly changed. He suddenly let out a long roar, and a fan-sized blue shield appeared in front of him. Boom! However, as soon as the blue shield appeared, it was smashed. Under the impact of the terrible aftermath, the Dark Child was knocked out. His chest bones were broken, his whole body twitched, and blood spurted from his mouth and nose. The power of one chop was enough to shock ghosts and gods. All the people present felt their scalps numb, and they were completely stunned. Before, Wang Xuanyu was so powerful, but he was knocked back by the Dark Child in 2 consecutive moves. This was enough to prove that the strength of the Dark Child was above Wang Xuanyu. But now, as soon as Lin Sun made a move, he defeated the Dark Child with one chop. With this comparison, they were even more able to understand how great the shock caused by the scene before their eyes was. Only Lin Sun frowned, and his expression became serious. In this chop, he utilized the extreme inheritance, the Yazi rage, and the battle saint technique, and he slashed out with all his strength with the all-conquering might of the law of water. It could be said to be one of the strongest killing moves he possessed. He originally intended to kill the Dark Child with one chop. Who would have thought that the result was merely injuring the Dark Child? It was obvious from this that the Dark Child's strength couldn't be underestimated. "You actually injured me?" The Dark Child's blood-red hair fluttered as he looked down at his collapsed chest, and he seemed to be in slight disbelief. His peerlessly handsome face had already become extremely cold and livid. He suddenly raised his head, and his scarlet eyes stared at the distant Lin Sun as he said word by word, "I want you die." When his voice sounded out, the aura around him was like a landslide and a tsunami, and it rose steadily like an ancient ferocious beast that was dormant within his body had awakened at this moment. When his voice sounded out, The aura emanated from his body was so strong that it caused all the experts present to find it difficult to breathe, and they turned pale with astonishment. The entire nether god sacrificial altar droned and trembled at this moment. Strands of obscure aura of the laws of the heavens and the earth could be seen with the naked eye as they started to converge in space, and they surged and surged without end. At this moment, the Dark Child was like a god of the heavens and the earth that controlled this expanse of the heavens and the earth. Quickly attack him. This fellow intends to utilize the laws of the heavens and the earth. The large black bird roared loudly as it flicked its hand, and the large black walk soared into the sky while flowing with hazy, chaotic chi. It was like a black veil that obstructed the energy of the laws that ceaselessly converged in the sky. Bang! At practically the exact same moment, Lin Sun realized that the situation was off, and he soared through the sky and pressed out with his finger. Instant of spring and autumn. When he noticed that the black walk had actually obstructed the laws of the heavens and the earth, the Dark Child's eyes suddenly focused, and he almost didn't dare believe his eyes. This was the place where he'd slumbered and cultivated. Even though the laws of the heavens and the earth were unable to be controlled by him, they could be utilized by him. Yet now, a black walk had soared through the sky and actually disturbed all of this. However, before he could recover from his shock, Lin Sun's finger had already arrived from afar. In an instant, the Dark Child felt as if he'd experienced the passage of time, and his body and mind were enveloped by a vast and mighty force. He felt as tiny as an ant. His heart twitched fiercely before he suddenly let out a furious roar. His figure suddenly transformed into a surging river of blood, and it rumbled as it covered the heavens and the earth as it swept out and intended to drown this expanse of the heavens and the earth. The nether rivers rage. At this moment, everyone in the surroundings retreated with astonishment. No matter if it was the might of Lin Sun's finger or the might of the nether river's rage, it caused their hearts and minds to be horrified. Their limbs went icy cold while great terror arose in their hearts. Bang! 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 Terrifying fluctuations resounded as they collided. It was like the heavens and the earth were collapsing, and the surging and raging river of blood was crushed. In the end, the Dark Child's figure appeared. Blood flowed from all 7 of his apertures, and his figure staggered and almost fell from space. He hated it to the point his eyes were bleeding, because if this strike was capable of drawing support from the laws of the heavens and the earth, then it would be utterly impossible for it to be crushed so easily. Chapter 1252. Underworld Emperor Smelting Pot. As soon as this thing appeared, Underworld Child immediately revealed a cold and disdainful killing intent. He seemed extremely conceited and confident. At the same time, Lin Sun suddenly stopped. He felt a fatal killing intent like a dagger on his back. This pot hasn't appeared in the world for tens of thousands of years. Who still remembers its prestige? It has been lonely for too long. It's a pity that the person it wants to kill this time is such a little bug. Underworld Child sighed softly. This kind of desolate and proud attitude made many people gasp. But the next moment they saw the big black bird holding the black pot, and with a clang, it fiercely slammed it on the smelting pot that was floating in the air. Ha ha ha, what the hell is this? Why are you still pretending? Your grandpa bird will keep this thing for you. The big black bird laughed wildly and complacently. Underworld Child was dumbfounded, as if he had been struck by lightning. His lips trembled, and he was so angry that he almost coughed up blood. Everyone was also stunned. Who would have thought that the smelting pot that Underworld Child regarded as his trump card would be directly hijacked by a blackbird before it could show its power? Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp. What kind of treasure was the black pot in the bird's hand? Even the smelting pot couldn't resist it. You're courting death. Underworld Child was completely furious. He almost went crazy as he rushed to kill the big blackbird. This smelting pot was the capital of his rise. It was not only a divine object, but also sealed many great fortunes. Once it was lost, how could he rise? Go! The big black bird flapped its wings and flew away like a flash of lightning. Whoosh! Lin Sun followed closely. Originally, according to his plan, he wanted to take this opportunity to suppress Underworld Child, but the sudden escape of the big blackbird made him feel something unusual. None of you can escape. With a thunderous roar, Underworld Child's figure shone brightly. Suddenly, it turned into thousands of blood-colored figures. Thousands of bodies. Like an overwhelming blood-colored rainbow, it covered the void at an extremely fast speed. Seeing this, everyone was shocked and at a loss. They watched helplessly as Underworld Child chased after Lin Sun and the big blackbird. By the time they reacted, Lin Sun and the others had already disappeared. The big blackbird's speed was incredibly fast, like a stream of light. Lin Sun ran ice drake steps. His speed was not slow, but he couldn't catch up with the big blackbird, which made him a little surprised. Behind him, blood shadows blotted out the sky and covered the earth as they chased relentlessly. "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you." The Ming Child's roar reverberated, filled with boundless hatred. Originally, he was making arrangements on the Nether God altar, intending to recruit a group of powerful subordinates to serve him and conquer the world, and he was extremely complacent. Unexpectedly, the appearance of Lin Sun and the big black bird ruined his plan. The most hateful thing was that even his smelting god pot was snatched away. This made him go completely crazy with hatred. In the distance, the blood-colored Nether River surged. Arriving here, the big black bird flapped its wings and shouted, "Quick, come up. I'll bring you over." Lin Sun jumped up and stepped on the back of the big blackbird. This made it very dissatisfied, and it shouted, "I told you to ride me, not to step on me." Lin Sun rolled his eyes. "I'm not interested in riding you." The big blackbird, there was no time to think more. The big blackbird flapped its wings and rushed over the Nether River. Rumble. In an instant, the Nether River boiled, and horrible white bones emerged one after another, densely packed like evil spirits rushing out of hell. They rushed to kill the big blackbird. Lin Sun gasped, and his scalp was numb. He couldn't imagine that if he hadn't taken the black boat at that time, it would have been impossible for him to cross the ominous Nether River. Buzzed in the big blackbird's claw, the black pot glowed and turned into a light curtain, defusing the killing from the Nether River. The weakest of these corpses has the combat power of the King Realm, and there are also some terrifying existences of the Sage Realm. Although they have fallen for thousands of years, the fighting spirit left by them has not been eroded. The big blackbird transmitted quickly, with a trace of complacency in its voice. If it wasn't for the fact that this black pot of mine has a powerful background, even if a saint came, it would be very difficult to suppress the attacks of these damn things. Lin Sun looked at the black pot and said, "Can I have a look at it?" The big blackbird said vigilantly, "Don't even think about it. You can't escape." In the distance, the hysterical roar of the children of hell came. "This guy is really noisy." The large black bird muttered, and then it chuckled. "Alas, this god-refining gourd is an extraordinary treasure, and its origins are extremely shocking. With it, I'll be able to do as I please when I enter the ancient path of the stars in the future." Lin Sun looked back and saw that the hundreds of figures of the children of hell were still chasing after him. It seemed that they would not stop until they died. However, it was difficult to catch up with them in a short time, because the big blackbird's speed was extremely fast, like teleportation. At least in terms of escaping, even Lin Sun was ashamed of his inferiority. Whoosh, seeing that he was about to reach the other side of the Nether River, Lin Sun secretly breathed a sigh of relief. But at this moment, the figure of the big black bird suddenly staggered as if it had been attacked. It suddenly screamed, "Boy, run!" There was incomparable fear in its voice. Boom! However, the warning of the big black bird was obviously a step late. A string of black rosary beads appeared out of thin air, each of which was blooming with mysterious and complicated Buddhist characters. The Buddhist runes transformed into the silhouettes of Buddhas. There were a total of 24 Buddhas, each of which was infinitely tall, filling the sky and the earth. They were solemn and flowing with infinite Buddhist light. Tut, tut, tut. At the same time, the sound of Sanskrit resounded, like the sound of demons and gods, exuding a sense of compassion and solemnity. Everything happened too fast. It seemed that they had been waiting here for a long time, while the big black bird and Lin Sun seemed to have walked right into the trap. In an instant, Lin Sun's body and mind were covered by endless coldness. His pores stood on end, and he felt a fatal threat of killing intent. Boom! From all directions, black Buddhist light condensed into handprints, falling from the sky, covering the universe with an unshakable power to suppress everything. This was the means of the great Earth Treasury Temple, and it was extremely terrifying. Lin Sun had killed the 18 sons of Ksitigarbha in the peerless Thunder Tribulation, so he naturally knew that this kind of fighting aura was unique to the descendants of the great Earth Treasury Temple. Chop! At this moment of life and death, Lin Sun almost exhausted all his potential and urged his strength to the extreme. The impermanence chop rushed out. Boom! An earth-shattering collision rang out. Lin Sun only felt sharp pain all over his body. His body was hit by the Buddhist seals, and he almost fainted. He was seriously injured in an instant. However, the power of the impermanence chop also manifested, and a Buddha shadow was slaughtered. With a swish, Lin Sun seized the opportunity and rushed out of the gap. Heretic, you can't escape. I've been waiting for you for a long time. But before Lin Sun could take a breath, an indifferent and calm voice sounded. It was a black-robed monk with a smooth forehead and an extremely handsome face. A strange black Buddhist symbol in the shape of a lotus was branded between his eyebrows. He stood there casually, and the black Buddhist light turned into a round of light and shadow, appearing behind his head, giving people a feeling of holiness and invincibility. Ancient Buddha, Lin Sun didn't need to guess at all to recognize him. Suppress. Without giving Lin Sun any chance to take a breath, a dark alms bowl appeared above ancient Buddha's head and shrouded Lin Sun. In an instant, Lin Sun's soul throbbed as if it wanted to escape. Dodge! The big black bird shrieked. It was filled with extreme anxiety. Lin Sun took a deep breath and chose to retreat. Unexpectedly, a demon-subduing pestle swept out from one side of the void and smashed the void with a bang. Although Lin Sun blocked the blow, his body was shaken and sank. Boom! At this moment, a pale hand rushed out of the blood river, grabbed Lin Sun's ankle, and dragged him into the Styx River. The blood waves rolled, and Lin Sun was nowhere to be found. Ancient Buddha looked calm. From the moment he attacked, he knew that he only needed to trap Lin Sun above the Styx River, and Lin Sun would be doomed. Swish! The demon-subduing pestle and the black alms bowl flew back to ancient Buddha's hands, and the Buddhas in the void also disappeared. How despicable you are! The 24 statues of the Buddhas, the Brahma's pure alms bowl, the fearless demon-subduing pestle, and the great silence of Zen space. Don't you feel ashamed to use them all for a sneak attack? The big black bird broke through the air, and its voice was cold and full of endless anger. How could it not be angry that Lin Sun was beaten into the Styx River under its nose? Gu Fuzi's expression was calm. He put his palms together and said, "Junior Master, this person is a heretic and can't be left alive. No matter how despicable he is, it will be a great merit if we can eliminate him." Who the hell is your martial uncle? Don't flatter yourself. Just you wait. I will destroy the great Earth Temple sooner or later. The big black bird's eyes turned red with hatred. It flapped its wings and flew away. Gu Fuzi's expression was indifferent as he watched the big black bird leave. Then, he looked at the turbid blood river Styx and floated away. Today, he laid a trap here, painstakingly and exhausted all means just to kill Lin Sun. Now that he had succeeded, he could leave in a huff. As for the big blackbird's hatred, ancient Buddha didn't care. As the saying went, if I don't go to hell, who will? If the heretic was not eliminated, the great Earth Temple would never have a day of peace. Boom! Almost as soon as ancient Buddha left, Mingzi rushed over and glanced around with his scarlet eyes. He also noticed the scene of Lin Sun's misfortune just now. He couldn't help but be shocked by ancient Buddha's terrifying means. No matter who you are, you must die. The dark child's figure disappeared as he spoke in a low, icy voice. Under the Styx River, the turbid blood waves rolled. Lin Sun's figure was gripped by the white water and kept sinking. No matter how hard he struggled, it was useless. Chapter 1253. Lin Sun didn't expect that he would be defeated by Gu Fozi instead of being caught by Mingzi. Thinking of this, Lin Sun felt an indescribable hatred. From the Xitigarbha 18 sons to Gu Fozi, they all regarded him as a heretic and used all means to target and attack him. This was too much. Lin Sun wasn't a saint without emotions and desires. How could he not be angry and hateful after being treated like this again and again? This debt must be paid with blood. Lin Sun gritted his teeth. He took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart, calming his mind. He was in a dangerous situation. His ankle was grabbed by a pale hand, and he couldn't break free at all. Moreover, as his body sank into the murky, blood-colored river, Lin Sun could clearly feel cold and violent thoughts coming from all directions and locking onto him. A sense of deathly danger surged in Lin Sun's heart. He felt suffocated and his body stiffened. He had never encountered such a dangerous and ominous thing since he stepped into the dying king realm. No one dared to cross the Styx River. But now he was being dragged by a large hand and sinking into it. He had already tried. The sharpness of the broken blade couldn't shake the pale hand. The most dangerous thing was that he had used Impermanence Chop, an instant of spring and autumn in the battle with Mingzi. Although he had severely injured Mingzi, he had used up most of his strength. Then he was ambushed by Gu Fozi and was seriously injured. Trouble. Lin Sun frowned. He couldn't care about anything else. He grabbed several king herbs and stuffed them into his mouth, refining them to heal his injuries. Boom! The pressure grew stronger and stronger. The Styx River was extremely murky, and one could vaguely see corpses and bones floating in it. At the same time, all kinds of cold and violent auras shrouded him. This put immense pressure on Lin Sun's body and mind. He felt like he was drowning. Even raising an arm was extremely difficult. In the end, he couldn't see anything. It was a sea of blood. Cold, oppressive, weird, inauspicious. All kinds of auras intertwined, causing Lin Sun's consciousness to suffer a great impact and become blurry. In the haze, there seemed to be bursts of sobbing and complaining voices, as well as the howls of evil spirits. Some saints sighed sorrowfully. Some god-fiends howled crazily. Lin Sun only felt that his mind was in a mess. It was dizzy and blurry, and occasionally some strange fragments of images would even appear. There were mountains of corpses and seas of blood. There was a rain of blood. There were gods, devils, ghosts, saints, demons. All kinds of strange figures were fighting fiercely, roaring. In the end, everything became indistinct and distant. The chaotic scenes gradually turned into endless darkness. After an unknown period of time, suddenly, a wisp of dim and mottled light emerged, illuminating the darkness and making Lin Sun's drowsy consciousness come together little by little. Then, with a jolt, he regained a trace of clarity. An oil lamp stood on one side of the ground, spreading a dim yellow light and covering the area where Lin Sun was. The shadow of the lamp was very small, like a dim umbrella, which could only cover a few meters around Lin Sun. Beyond that, it was the boundless river. The river water was as dark as ink. Lamp of no blame. Lin Sun's consciousness gradually became sober. He recognized this treasure given by the skeleton boatman and realized that he was intoxicated by this lamp. Lin Sun took a deep breath and sensed carefully. In the narrow area shrouded by the dim yellow light, there was nothing unusual. It gave people a feeling of calmness, stability, and peace of mind. But when his consciousness swept out of the shadow of the lamp, in an instant, the horrible cold and violent breath rushed to him like a landslide and a tsunami. In the dark water, there seemed to be countless demons and ghosts hibernating and waiting to devour people. Lin Sun decisively withdrew his consciousness. There seemed to be a ferocious and cold roar in his ears, which made him have a lingering fear and a gloomy face. There is no doubt that this was the bottom of Styx River. However, the muddy, blood-colored river water had already become oppressive and dark. Moreover, without the lamp of no blame, the consequences would be absolutely unimaginable. Lin Sun took a deep breath and thought silently for a long time. Then, he abandoned all distractions and began to meditate. It was so quiet around that even the sound of water could not be heard. The omnipresent darkness made it difficult for people to breathe. But Lin Sun didn't notice it at all. One day later, Lin Sun recovered from his injuries and returned to his peak state. He only felt that his ears and eyes were clear, refreshed, and had a strong desire to survive. He looked at the lamp of no blame on one side. Its wick was as small as a bean, swaying dim and mottled light and shadow, giving people a sense of warmth. The lamp was gray and antique, like a stubborn iron that had been polished for countless years, giving people a kind of breath of the precipitation of time. At the beginning, the skeleton boatman hung such a lamp on the black boat to cross Styx River. Lin Sun reached out to hold the lamp and wanted to leave Styx River with its power. However, no matter how hard he tried, the lamp seemed to grow on the ground and didn't move at all. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed, and he looked at it carefully. After a while, he finally understood the reason. Although the lamp held up the shadow and blocked the strange power in the darkness for him, it was also under the oppression of that strange power. But at the same time, it was also under the oppression of that strange power. Lin Sun's face became uncertain, and he realized a key problem. If he wanted to get out of trouble, he must first get rid of the strange power in the dark Styx River. However, with his current strength, it was impossible to do this at all. What should he do? Lin Sun was lost in thought. He was never a person who would wait for death. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, he would not give up. The big black bird once said that if it weren't for the black pot in its hand, even a sage couldn't suppress the strange power in Styx River. Now, Lin Sun was at the bottom of Styx River, and his strength was still far from that of sage. It seemed that there was no hope for him to get out of trouble. But was it really so? 3 days later, a bold idea came to Lin Sun's mind. If he triggered the tribulation thunder of immortality, could he open a way out? Derived from the will of nature, tribulation thunder was extremely strong and overbearing. It could kill the evil spirits in the world and had the power to cleanse the universe. Under the Styx River, there were piles of bones and corpses. The residual thoughts and resentment from the ancient times sank here, which made it seem strange and ominous. If he could use this opportunity to break open a path of survival, it would undoubtedly be a good choice. But at the same time, the risk was extremely high. Lin Sun couldn't guarantee whether he would be disturbed and attacked by those strange residual thoughts during the tribulation. Once there was a mistake, he would be doomed eternally. But after thinking about it, this was the only way Lin Sun could think of to get out of trouble. Well, there's still a long way to go before I trigger the first tribulation on the road to immortality. Before that, I can only practice in seclusion here. Yes, practice in seclusion. Being trapped here was like a dormant for a while. Lin Sun didn't think that he would be trapped here for the rest of his life. Thinking of this, Lin Sun completely calmed down and began to plan silently. This time, he had obtained a lot of opportunities in the forbidden land of Styx River, such as the wonderful Tao Fire, the sword move left by Wu Yang, nearly 100 thunder purple bamboos, and the great netherworld magic. Not to mention these, just the divine medicine and king medicine he carried were enough to support him for a long time. Without hesitation, Lin Sun summoned the wonderful Tao Fire and turned it into a furnace, exuding an eternal and magical aura. Clang! The broken blade rushed into the furnace in an instant and began to be tempered and nurtured. Lin Sun waved his sleeve, and a pile of divine materials poured out, shining dazzlingly. These divine materials were all collected by him over the years. Now, he planned to use them to temper the broken blade. Lin Sun looked calm. He separated a strand of his divine awareness to control the wonderful Tao fire and put all kinds of divine materials into the fire from time to time. As a grandmaster of spiritual tattoos, Lin Sun was naturally familiar with refining weapons. Although nurturing a supreme weapon was different from refining weapons, they reached the same goal by different means. With the help of the wonderful Tao fire, it was enough for him to thoroughly temper the broken blade. The origin of the broken blade was extremely mysterious, and it had its own inheritance. But in the final analysis, it was incomplete. Lin Sun had long considered whether he should refine a new supreme weapon of King's Path or turn the broken sword into his own supreme weapon of King's Path. Now, he made a decision. Since he started cultivating, the broken blade had always exerted immeasurable power. For example, the inheritance of Yuan and Ji could only be displayed through the broken blade. If he chose a new weapon as the supreme weapon, it would be tantamount to covering the broken blade with dust and wasting God's gift. The wonderful Tao fire was shining like a furnace, constantly smelting divine materials. The broken blade floated in it and was constantly being tempered and nurtured. Lin Sun used part of his divine awareness to control and pay attention to all this, and then he no longer paid attention to it and immersed himself in his own cultivation. Now, his cultivation had reached the late stage of the king realm, only one step away from the fulfillment. What he needed to do now was to reach the extreme of his cultivation and break through. Only in this way could he trigger the first test of immortality. However, before that, Lin Sun decided to practice the great meditating magic first. If he could divide his spirit into 3 parts, each of which could control the past, present, and future, it would be enough to get twice the result with half the effort for his own cultivation. For example, during cultivation, one of his spirit could be used to comprehend martial arts, one to temper his cultivation, and the last to comprehend the power of the Great Way. In the darkness, the dim oil lamp swayed. Lin Sun was immersed in meditation, unaware of the passage of time. Demon Lin was dead. This news, like a storm, swept the entire distant fire territory in just a few days, causing an uproar. Many people couldn't believe it, but with the return of the strongmen who went to the forbidden land of Styx to explore opportunities, this news was further confirmed. Demon Lin died in the pursuit of the children of Styx. He was attacked by the ancient Buddha from the earthly scripture temple and died in the Styx. For a time, many people felt sorry for him. Demon Lin was like a legend, with too many miracles happening to him. Since his debut, he had never been defeated. However, it was precisely such a monstrous and peerless figure that perished under the Netherworld River. How could one not sigh and sigh? Chapter 1254. The exploration of the Nether River Bloodlands had ended, and news of what had happened had spread. 3 people were the center of attention. The first was Lin Sun. The ancient freak Wu Shanlin, the 13th Prince Wu Lingdao, and other peerless figures had all died at his hands. His achievements were dazzling and eye-catching. But it was also a pity that such a dazzling, peerless figure had died in the Nether River. Anyone who heard this would not be able to maintain their composure. The second was Darkchild, a terrifying figure who had awakened from the Nether Divine altar after slumbering for eons. His combat strength was undeniably powerful. Even Wang Xuanyu had been forced back by 2 moves. Moreover, he held the Netherworld Emperor Smelting God Gourd, which sealed many heaven-defying fortunes. It was covetous, but also fearful. However, Darkchild was not invincible, because everyone knew that Demon Godlin had once heavily injured him and worked with a wretched blackbird to use a black walk to take away the Netherworld Emperor Smelting God Gourd from Darkchild's hands. Unfortunately, Demon Godlin had died before he could enjoy the fruits of his victory. The third was Gu Fuzi. It could be said that the reason why Gu Fuzi had attracted attention was because he had single-handedly caused Lin Sun's death. Was Demon Godlin strong? Yes. No matter if it was in the ancient Desolation region or the Apex region, Merely the three words devil god Lin was sufficient to deter all experts and cause the expressions of others to change. But in the end, he had still died in Gu Fuzi's meticulously planned killing trap. As such, it was difficult for Gu Fuzi not to attract attention. Of course, Gu Fuzi had been extremely famous in the past, but he was extremely mysterious, so there was little news about him. But now, he had become famous in a single battle, stepping on Demon God Lin's corpse and receiving the attention of everyone. Apart from the three of them, there were other news that shook people's hearts, but in comparison, their influence was much less. Demon God Lin is dead. Ha ha! 7th brother, 13th brother, this is heaven's will. You can rest in peace. In front of Feishing's spiritual mountain, 9th Golden Crow Prince Wu Lingkong was crying and laughing. His voice was sorrowful, but there was also an indescribable joy. Behind him, the experts of the Golden Crow clan all had expressions of excitement and sorrow. A single fiend god Lin had killed countless of their experts. Now that he was finally in trouble, it made them feel like they had avenged their great vengeance. All right, the heavens have eyes. That bastard is finally dead. It's good that he's dead. It's a wonderful death. Who would dare believe that Demon God Lin was actually killed by someone? Ha ha! On this day, the successors of the 10,000 Bee Spirit Mountain, the Xuandu Dao sect, the Sea Soul race, and the moon-worshipping cult gathered together. When talking about the news of Lin Sun's death, they were all beaming with joy and gloating, as if the heaviest stone in their hearts had been removed. People say that Lin Sun is dead, but I don't believe it. Ji Xingyao said softly. Her clothes were as white as snow, and her figure was slender and graceful. She was as beautiful as a painting. Mo Tianhe sighed and said, Junior sister, we've been waiting outside the forbidden area of the Blood River for half a month, yet we haven't seen him appear. Do you think he's still alive? Yes. It was Old Toad who answered. He was uncharacteristically calm. He stared in the direction of the forbidden area of the Styx River and said, He's my big brother. How could he die like this? His voice was low, as if he was forcibly suppressing his inner emotions. Then he withdrew his gaze, turned around resolutely, and strode away. Where are you going? Ji Xingyao asked. Hurry up, stop him. He's probably going to avenge Gu Fuzi. Suddenly, Mo Tianhe's face changed, and he chased after Old Toad with Ji Xingyao. However, when they caught up, there was no sign of Old Toad. In a gloomy swamp in the wind-friendly region, swish! A wisp of sword insight that was dazzling like fireworks appeared abruptly, and it transformed into a myriad of strands of sword chi that enveloped down. A series of muffled groans were heard, mixed with bursts of blood and screams. After a while, silence was restored on the spot. There were 7 or 8 bloody corpses on the ground. Clang! The only man in gray standing on the spot put away the 3-foot-long sword in his hand and turned away. Demon God Lin was dead. When he returned from the swamp and heard the news, the man in gray was stunned and couldn't help clenching his hands. Blue veins popped on the back of his hands. Back then, you treated me as a brother. Today, I will avenge you with my life. After a long time, the man in gray moved, walking alone in silence and determination. If you treat me like a national warrior, I will repay you like a national warrior. Junior sister Jingxian, Demon God Lin, is already dead. Why can't you let go? In the distant fire region, Yin Zhanxiu frowned. Ever since she heard of Lin Sun's death, Zhao Jingxian had come to the distant fire region as if possessed. For 7 days and 7 nights, she didn't stop or rest. She didn't believe that Lin Sun would die. Heavy snow fell from the sky. Zhao Jingshuan's figure moved forward silently. She pursed her lips tightly, her pretty face pale, and her bright and clear eyes dim and empty. In the past, she was like a bright moon, pure and radiant. Her beauty and grace were far beyond that of ordinary women. But now, she was no longer as beautiful as before. This made Yin Zhanxiu's heart ache, and he hated Lin Sun even more. It was unforgivable that Lin Sun was dead. Of course, if Lin Sun was still alive, he would kill him himself. Among the top figures of this generation, There are only two people that I admire. One is Yin Qingbai. He was born with a sword bone and has unparalleled talent. He is still invincible and knows the true meaning of Sword Tao. The other is Lin Sun. In a famed mountain-blessed land, Mi Hongjin, the successor of Sun Moon Hall, said slowly, Yin Qingbai has been gifted since he was young. After entering the Heavenly Sword sect to cultivate, he killed decisively and rose rapidly. In terms of cultivation, he is almost invincible, enough to make his peers pale in comparison. Living in the same era as him is undoubtedly a misfortune for other experts. Originally, I thought that there was no one in this world who could compete with Yin Qingbai. But since Lin Sun rose in the ancient Desolation realm, I saw this possibility. This was undoubtedly an extremely high evaluation. The nearby successors of Sun Moon Hall were all moved. Mi Hongjin was the leader of the younger generation of Sun Moon Hall. Only Wang Xuanyu, Yimo, Yin Zhanxiu, and a few others could compare to him. But now, he gave such a high evaluation of Yin Qingbai and Lin Sun. Who wouldn't be shocked? Yin Qingbai had been famous for a long time. His strength had long been known to all, which was understandable and acceptable. But there was a lot of controversy about Lin Sun. In particular, when Mi Hongjin regarded Lin Sun as an expert who could compete with Yin Qingbai, these successors of Sun Moon Hall were a little stunned and unconvinced. You don't understand. Since Lin Sun rose to the present, he alone conquered enemies in all directions, killed his way out of many difficulties, and has never suffered a real defeat so far. This in itself is like a miracle. Mi Hongjin's eyes were a little complicated. He had never paid attention to Lin Sun before, but when he began to understand more and more, he was more and more surprised. Because Lin Sun's cultivation path could absolutely be described as difficult and invincible. But he is dead after all, someone murmured. Mi Hongjin suddenly fell silent. After a long time, he sighed and said, If there is no demon god Lin in the world, won't the path of cultivation be boring? Speaking of this, he was slightly stunned. He glanced around and said, Where is junior brother Xiao? Everyone knew that he was talking about Xiao Qinghe. Senior brother Mi. After hearing the news of demon god Lin's death, senior brother Xiao left the mountain alone. Before he left a letter. A woman came out and presented the letter. Mi Hongjin opened it and read, I have made countless friends in this life, but only a few confidants. Lin Sun is one of them. Now that I have heard the news of his death, I will feel uneasy if I don't ask for an explanation for him. Please forgive me. Senior brother Mi Hongjin sighed softly. He was worried and gratified. The path of cultivation was long. It was a great fortune in life to have one or two confidants who could share life and death with you. The impact of Lin Sun's death was far beyond expectations. When everyone was surprised why this news was spreading in the Upper Nine Realms, they suddenly realized that Lin Sun's influence was enough to affect everyone's nerves unconsciously. Wasn't this also a kind of power? But it was a pity that this kind of power manifested after his death. This made many people sigh. Just like the sun in the sky, it had always been there, and people had long been accustomed to its existence. But when it fell one day and never appeared again, people would find that the sun was unique. Time was merciless, and this saying was true. As time passed, the news about Lin Sun gradually began to fade. Every once in a while, there would be a sensational event in the Upper Nine Realms. A peerless figure rose and led the way for a while. A heaven-defying land of fortune appeared, attracting strong people from all over the world to explore. Slowly, the discussion about Lin Sun became less and less. Whenever it was mentioned, it was just a sigh of regret or a gloating laugh. The distant Fire Realm was the same as before, with frequent wars and bloody conflicts. On this day, a group of strong people came to Flying Star Mountain. Kill, leave no one alive. Yet Chun, who was in the lead, had a cold look in his eyes. With a command, a group of strong people behind him swarmed out. Not long after, all kinds of sounds rang out on Flying Star Mountain, including angry roars, shrill screams, and resentful roars, divine light, light rain, Taoist sound, and treasure light intertwined on the mountain, illuminating the sky. There, scarlet blood and fierce fighting were taking place. It was like purgatory. Yi-Chen was dressed in a purple robe, and his black hair was as smooth as silk. His straight and thin figure was like a sword that could pierce the sky. The fire and the tragic scene on the distant mountain were reflected in his eyes, but it didn't cause any ripple. He seemed so indifferent and cold. After a long time, the ninth prince of Golden Crow, Wu Lingkong, stumbled out of Flying Star Mountain. Puff! However, before he could escape, his chest was pierced by a purple sword. At this time, he saw Yi-Chen in the distance. Of course, he knew Sword Devil Yi-Chen from Crepe Myrtle Mountain in the southern mysterious world. However, he didn't understand why Yi-Chen attacked their branch of Golden Crow. Why? Wu Lingkong's eyes were full of resentment. Lin Sun had a lot of enemies when he was alive. Now he is gone, but those enemies are still free and unfettered in the world. I don't like them, so I decided to help him take revenge one by one to settle the unresolved knot in his heart. Yi-Chen's clothes were fluttering, and he said indifferently, P.S. Thank you for your concern and comfort. Goldfish's grandfather has been buried, and the old man passed away peacefully. This may be the only comfort for Goldfish's family. Tomorrow, Goldfish will take more time to restore the update. If there are any changes, she will inform you in advance. Chapter 1255. Flying Star Mountain was a scene of devastation and smoke. With the death of the ninth Golden Crow Prince, Wu Lingkong, the Golden Crow bloodline's experts who had entered the Apex domain were almost all gone. There was no chance for them to rise again. Let's go to the territory of the Xuandu Dao sect. Yi-Chen's voice was indifferent. Young master, killing the experts of the Golden Crow lineage this time has already caused a great enmity between our Crepe Myrtle Mountain and the Golden Crow lineage. If we provoke the Xuandu Dao sect again, an expert hesitated and couldn't help but speak, but he was interrupted before he could finish speaking. If Lin Sun knew I was in trouble, he would definitely do the same for me. After saying that, Yi-Chen left first. The others looked at each other, but in the end, they all followed. The Wild Elephant Mountain was where the Xuandu Dao sect was located. However, when Yi-Chen arrived, he couldn't help but be startled. It was obvious that an incomparably bloody battle had just occurred on this mountain. The mountain had collapsed, and ghastly bloodstains could be seen everywhere. Someone actually killed the forces of the Xuandu Dao sect first. Yi-Chen raised his eyebrows before making a decision. He waved his hand and said, Let's go to the territory of the Profound Light Race. However, when they arrived at the Golden Mist Mountain of the Ancient Light Race, this place had become a land of blood, and the air was filled with the smell of gunpowder. Someone beat me to again? Yi-Chen frowned, took a deep breath, and said, Let's go to the Sea Spirit Clan's territory. All the experts that followed behind Yi-Chen couldn't help but smile bitterly, and they'd already discerned that if they didn't allow Yi-Chen to completely vent today, then he was bound to not let the matter rest. Majestic Mountain was the territory of the Sea Soul Clan. Boom! When Yi-Chen arrived, he just happened to see a wavy blade light that was an entire 3 kilometers long slashed down, and it slashed apart a mountain. At the same time, an imposing figure stood proudly in the void, the saber in his hand still letting out a long cry. This person wore a white robe and had crimson hair that was like fire. He was like a sun that illuminated the sky alone, and he revealed his ability to the fullest, radiated brilliant light, and possessed a domineering aura. Mad Saber, laughing at the heavens. So, it's this guy. Yi-Chen's eyelids twitched. He couldn't help but ask, Who is that? Do you need help? In the distance, laughing at the heavens turned around and looked over. His facial features were as if they were carved by a knife, his brows were wide, and he had an imposing, heroic spirit. His eyes were bright and resplendent, and they were terrifying like the edge of a blade. Laughing at the heavens couldn't help but be stunned when he saw Yi-Chen, and then he said with disdain, They're just a bunch of scoundrels. How could they withstand a single strike from me? You're already doing me a favor by just standing there and not dragging me down. The corner of Yi-Chen's mouth twitched fiercely. If it weren't for the fact that laughing at the heavens had the same goal as him, which was to avenge Lin's son, he would never have tolerated such ridicule. He and Laughing at the Heavens had never liked each other since they were young. Even though they were given the title of Sword and Saber Paragon, only the two of them knew how bad their relationship was. It didn't take long for Laughing at the Heavens' attack to annihilate all of the Sea Soul clan's experts who were entrenched on Lofty Mountain. Even those who had escaped were killed by Yi Chun. "I will avenge Lin's son. You don't have to intervene." Laughing at the Heavens gave Yi Chun a sidelong glance. "Hee, who do you think you are? Who gave you the right to order me?" Yi Chun sneered. "No wonder you dare to be so arrogant. So you've stepped into the second tribulation of immortality. Unfortunately, I'm afraid your strength isn't enough to deal with Gu Fozi." Laughing at the Heavens commented. Yi Chun couldn't help but laugh. "Aren't you also in the second tribulation of immortality? How dare you be so arrogant? Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue?" The two of them sparred with each other, and anger rose in their hearts. They were like a pair of enemies who had met on a narrow road. At this moment, someone came to deliver a message. "Young master, I just received news that someone attacked the territory of 10,000 B Spirit Mountain." "Who?" Yi Chun and Laughing at the Heavens' expressions changed. Their attention was diverted, and they asked at the same time. "It seems to be the successor of Sun Moon Hall, Shao Qinghe." Swoosh! When they heard the news, Yi Chun and Laughing at the Heavens couldn't be bothered to confront each other. They both took action and rushed towards 10,000 B Spirit Mountain. On this day, the famed blessed lands occupied by the Golden Crow lineage, the Xuandu Dao sect, the Mystic Light Ancient Clan, the Sea Soul Clan, and other major forces were all breached. There were countless casualties. On that day, the distant Fire Realm was in an uproar, especially when they learned that the Southern Profound World's Saber and Sword Paragon, Laughing at the Heavens, and Sword Demon Yi Chun had joined forces for the first time, setting off a storm of blood. Countless experts were shocked. Everything was for the sake of Demon God Lin's unfinished grudge. For a moment, the forces that originally had a grudge against Lin's son were all anxious. Even some of the experts who had gloated over Lin Sun's misfortune were silent. They didn't dare to say anything for fear of getting into trouble. It was also at this time that people realized that although Lin's son had died, his influence still existed. Too many things could happen in half a year, especially in the upper 9 realms, which was filled with competition, blood, and slaughter. Shocking things happened almost every day. There were many outstanding people who advanced on the path of cultivation, and their realm rose steadily. Their rise was unstoppable. There were also many famous experts who met with disaster and fell like comets, disappearing from people's sight. Life and death, sorrow and joy were playing out all the time. However, no one noticed that in different areas of the upper 9 realms, there was a group of people who had been looking for Gu Fozi. Unfortunately, since Gu Fozi appeared in the sticks, he disappeared without a trace, as if he had evaporated from the world. At this time, it had been half a year since the news of Lin Sun's death spread. It had been 2 years since the domain of death came to the ancient Desolation realm. At the bottom of the sticks, the dim yellow light flickered and the light was mottled. Lin Sun sat cross-legged, silent like an old monk in meditation. In his sea of consciousness, there were 3 primordial spirit dharma forms meditating. One represented the past, with a divine flower of great law above his head. It was green, and a rain of light was falling. It was like a waterfall of light, and there was a faint sound of Tao. One of them was at the center, representing the present world. The great Tao divine flower above his head was a turbid color. The rain of light that scattered down was also extremely cryptic, constantly changing. One represented the future. The divine flower of great law above his head was illusory, and the rain of light was dreamy and unreal like a bubble. The 3 primordial spirit dharma forms were all dignified, sitting in the sea of consciousness, giving people a sense of eternity through the past and the future. This was the great meditating magic. Cutting the primordial spirit and dividing it into 3 corresponded to the past, present, and future of the divine flower gathering at one's head. It was indescribably mysterious. It took Lin half a year just to practice this method. Finally, Lin Sun reached a higher level and succeeded in practicing this method. At this time, Lin Sun suddenly had a wonderful feeling in his heart, as if he could produce thousands of thoughts with a single thought. He could think about the future and connect with the past. The divine soul was like a lamp, which involved the core mystery of the road to longevity. Now, Lin Sun's primordial spirit was divided into three, and he had become completely different from other King Realm strongmen in the world. Buzz, as Lin Sun thought about it, the three primordial spirit Dharma forms all responded. They either studied the mystery of martial arts, manipulated the chi around them to refine their cultivation, or comprehended the profound meaning of the great law. In an instant, completely different feelings and experiences emerged all over his body, which made Lin Sun feel as if there were three people doing different things. But what he got and felt was all presented in his mind. After a while, Lin Sun couldn't help but marvel in his heart. The great meditating magic was indeed an unparalleled inheritance. Dividing the primordial spirit into three could undoubtedly save more time for cultivation. It was amazing to take care of cultivation, enlightenment, and martial arts at the same time. The broken blade has also transformed. Lin Sun opened his eyes. In the void in front of him, there was a furnace derived from the wonderful Tao fire, and a broken blade was floating in it. The blade was shining brilliantly, flowing with a magnificent white light rain, bright and holy. On the ground, most of the divine materials that were originally piled up like a mountain had been consumed. Clang! As Lin Sun thought about it, the broken blade swept out of the furnace. It was like an illusory flowing light as a feather. It floated quietly in the void, and the sharpness it emitted cut the surrounding void inch by inch, making a sizzling sound. As the light rain drifted, on its surface, wisps of obscure and mysterious Taoist patterns emerged, emitting a palpitating luster. Its power is 20% higher than before. Lin Sun was very familiar with the broken blade. Now, after half a year of tempering and smelting many divine materials, the obvious changes of the broken blade naturally couldn't escape Lin Sun's eyes. 20% of its power was already very shocking. For the strong of the same generation, the difference of fighting power between them might be the difference between life and death. However, what made Lin Sun frown was that even though the power had obviously improved a lot, the broken blade showed no sign of evolution. It was still incomplete. Obviously, there was still a long way to go to restore the broken blade to its complete state. This made Lin Sun more and more certain that the origin of the broken blade must be extremely extraordinary. Next, I can start to prepare for breaking through the realm. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun abandoned the distractions in his mind and continued to put the broken blade into the wonderful Tao fire for tempering, while he himself closed his eyes to practice again. What was different from the past was that his three Dharma spirits were practicing chi refining, Tao enlightenment, and martial arts at the same time. Distant Fire Realm, where the Distant Fire Battle Tablet was located. The Tianjiao Golden List was always on. Every once in a while, the ranking of the top 100 would change. It should be known that the competition on the Tianjiao Golden List was not only in the Distant Fire Realm, but also in other places in the Upper Nine Realms. It could be imagined how fierce the competition was. On this day, Yin Qingbai came. He stood in front of the Distant Fire Battle Tablet with his hands behind his back, his eyes deep and calm. Senior Brother Yin, I have inquired clearly that Lin Sun died under the sticks a year ago. It should be true after all kinds of information. A successor of the heaven-reaching sword sect came in a hurry and whispered respectfully, "Dead." Yin Qingbai was stunned. Before coming to the Upper Nine Realms, he once said to Lin Sun in his heart, "If you don't come when I become a king, I will go to find you." This was a kind of extremely firm, killing intent. He couldn't tolerate Lin Sun to walk out of the domain of absolute peak alive. Who would have thought that when he came to find Lin Sun, the young man he once regarded as a must-kill target had died a year ago? Chapter 1256. Lin Sun was dead. Yin Qingbai was a little regretful. It was the first time in years that he had such a firm killing intent. But before he could take action, his opponent had already died. Yin Qingbai couldn't help but sigh that fate was making fools of people. Let's go. Yin Qingbai shook his head, put his hands behind his back, and floated away. The group of successors of the heaven-reaching sword sect followed him, feeling a little regretful. Lin Sun was dead, but not in their hands. This kind of feeling made them happy, but not completely happy. From that day on, the discussion about Lin Sun in the upper 9 realms became less and less, until no one cared about him anymore. After all, a dead man, no matter how amazing he was when he was alive, was just a pile of yellow soil, a pile of bones, dissipating in the wind and clouds. There was a lush forest outside the Styx forbidden area. A year after the news of Lin Sun's death spread, a thatched cottage appeared in the forest. Outside the cottage, there were flower beds, herb fields, and luxuriant flowers and trees. Every day, there would be a woman in plain, white clothes working hard in the flower beds and herb fields. Occasionally, she would sit on a wooden stool under the eaves, rubbing a treasure cauldron in her hand, lost in thought. The woman was clean and beautiful, like the bright moon, quiet and graceful, but slightly thinner than before. Minter Jingxian, he is already dead. How long are you going to wait here? Yin Zhanxiu would appear here every once in a while, his expression becoming more and more complicated, and his state of mind becoming more and more resentful. Was it necessary to do this because of Lin Sun? He didn't understand. He didn't want to understand. There are countless opportunities in the upper 9 realms. Waiting here is equivalent to wasting your cultivation opportunities and wasting your cultivation path. Junior sister Jingxian, come with me. You still have a bright future ahead of you. Why waste your golden years for a dead person? Yin Zhanxiu would try his best to persuade her every time, but every time he would return empty-handed. This gradually made him lose his patience, and he gradually came to visit less and less. Zhao Jingxian didn't care about this at all. She never believed that he would die like this. Time flowed by like a white steed flitting past a crack. The second year of being trapped at the bottom of the Styx forbidden area was also the third year since the absolute domain came to the ancient desolation realm. Lin Sun woke up from meditation. The dim yellow innocent lamp flickered. In the void, within the cauldron formed from the myriad Tao flames, illusory multicolored light flowed like a tide. One could vaguely see a broken blade floating within, mysterious and holy. On the ground, the divine materials that were originally piled up like a small hill had long since been used up, and it was completely empty. Just by perceiving, Lin knew that the power of the broken sword had increased by about 10%. It seemed that the improvement was not as great as the first time, but Lin Sun knew that the further he improved the power of the broken sword, the more difficult it would be. Just like cultivation, the higher the level, the harder it would be to climb. Being able to increase his strength by 10% was already very good. Clang! Lin Sun waved his hand and took back the broken sword. Compared to before the seclusion at the bottom of the Netherworld River, the broken blade had become even more transparent, illusory, and holy, but it also had an extremely restrained and peerless sharpness. It looked like a jade white flowing light that was as light as a feather, but its aura was completely different from before. Unfortunately, the broken blade had yet to transform into its complete form. This made Lin realize that for a long time from now on, if he wanted to transform the broken sword, ordinary divine materials would no longer be able to do it. Puff! Lin Sun held the broken sword in his hand and pierced a bone-deep wound on his wrist. Blood flowed out like a fountain, but in the blink of an eye, the wound was healed, and no scar could be seen at all. This was the healing power of the immortal way's advancement to the Tao truth. Move, then. With a thought from Lin Sun, a dragon's roar came from his body. Suddenly, his body emitted a vast, majestic, and grand dragon's power. In a trance, it was not a man sitting cross-legged, but a dragon with its head held high. A man like a dragon. The ultimate mystery of the 9 changes of Calamity Dragon was to shed the dragon, which transformed the 9 dragon sons of different forms into a real dragon, so that this inheritance also had a new transformation. At this moment, if Lin Sun was seen by other practitioners, they would probably think that he was a pure-blood descendant of a real dragon. My cultivation has also reached the mastery level. Now, I only need an opportunity to break through and trigger the thunder test. Lin Sun felt the transformation of his strength and thought silently. It had been 2 years since he was trapped at the bottom of Styx River. No matter in martial arts, enlightenment, or cultivation, he had made significant progress. Even the power of the broken sword was improved. This kind of change was undoubtedly amazing, but for Lin Sun, it was a matter of course. His spirit divided into 3 parts, so he could practice martial arts, enlightenment, and cultivation at the same time, which saved him a lot of precious time. At the same time, Qianyo's heart comprehended the Tao through the method of mind controlling and Tao, which made his cultivation progress by leaps and bounds. Even his cultivation had the support of many king and divine medicines. The effects of cultivating in the Blessed Enclave were even better than cultivating in the Blessed Enclave. The only trouble was that Lin Sun was completely isolated from the outside world when he was trapped here, so he couldn't get the news of the outside world. Come to think of it, everyone in the world thinks that I'm already dead. Thinking of this, Lin Sun couldn't help sighing in his heart. The only way to solve the current dilemma was to break through as soon as possible. Spring passed and autumn came. Another 2 years passed unknowingly. After the fierce fighting and struggle in the first few years of the Upper 9 realms, the power structure had become stable. All the places of opportunity had been visited by strong people from all sides. Some people had also been paying attention to some places of opportunity that had not yet appeared. The situation of the entire Upper 9 realms had entered a relatively quiet period of dormancy. In recent years, all the strong people who obtained opportunities and treasures in the fierce competition and fighting were undoubtedly lucky. Now, these strong people had chosen to practice in seclusion to digest the opportunities they had obtained, so as to temper their cultivation. Everything was for the sake of strengthening themselves. Only by increasing one's cultivation and increasing one's battle prowess would one be able to survive in the competition in the next few years. Only then would one be able to stand above all others in the competition for supremacy. Junior sister Jingxian, do you know that someone in the Upper 9 realms has stepped into the 5th tribulation of longevity? On this day, Yin Zhanqiu came again. Looking at Zhao Jingxian sitting quietly under the eaves of the cottage, he couldn't help sighing. Then he forced himself to cheer up and said with a smile, "It's a pity that the guy who stepped into the 5th tribulation of longevity is not at the peak of becoming a king, so there's nothing to worry about." Zhao Jingxian still remained silent. She had been waiting here for 3 years. The cottage, the herb field, the flower garden had been meticulously renovated by her, and now it was a quiet and beautiful scenery. However, the person she was waiting for still hadn't appeared. Junior sister Jingxian, you've been here for 2 years. Do you know what you've missed? Yin Zhanqiu took a deep breath and said, "Right now, the most dazzling figures such as Yun Qingbai, Qiling Xiao, Bai Longting, Lin Shui, and Yimo have all stepped into the 3rd tribulation of longevity. But what about you? In these 3 years, your cultivation is still stuck in the king's realm. If you continue to delay like this, you will only fall behind more and more in the future." He was heartbroken. With Zhao Jingshuan's foundation and talent, if it weren't for these 3 years, even if she couldn't step into the 3rd tribulation of longevity, she could at least step into the 2nd tribulation of longevity. Zhao Jingxian turned a deaf ear to him and didn't say a word. This made Yin Zhanqiu's expression flicker. After a long time, he gritted his teeth and said angrily, "Junior sister Jingxian, I might as well tell you that even if Lin Sun is alive, I will kill him with my own hands. What you're waiting for is destined to be a dead man." After saying that, he flicked his sleeves and left. Zhao Jingxian raised her head slightly and looked at Yin Zhanqiu's departing figure. She couldn't help but sigh softly. If he was alive, how could she be qualified to be his enemy? "I've been trapped here for 4 years, at the bottom of the Styx River," Lin Sun's hair and beard were messy, but his eyes were still bright and deep. He sat there cross-legged, his heart in a daze. For 4 years, he had been alone here in seclusion. All he could see was the dark river, and only a dim yellow lamp accompanied him. No one knew what it felt like. What made Lin Sun feel helpless was that the opportunity he had been waiting for to advance had never come. He had been waiting for 2 years since the last time he reached the consummation of his cultivation. In these 2 years, he had also reached the Tao Law level in the Devouring Star Way and the Immortality Way. Moreover, he had refined a yin and yang lotus and mastered the profound meaning of yin and yang. Now, he had merged the yin and yang into the Tai Chi Great Way and had reached the Tao Truth level. In addition, his understanding of the impermanence chop had also reached the advanced level, and its power had also undergone earth-shaking changes. At least, his strength had changed completely and was far from what it was 4 years ago when he was trapped here. But the opportunity to advance still hadn't come. On the contrary, Little Silver had ushered in the tribulation of transforming into a king not long ago, and evolved into a real spirit-eating bug king in one fell swoop. Speaking of Little Silver, it had to be mentioned that in the Pavilion of the Burning Immortal Realm, Little Silver had challenged the Tao Heaven Ladder alone and obtained the 39th place. It was also because of this that he could enter the upper 9 realms with Lin Sun. However, at that time, in order to become a king, Little Silver chose to be silent, as if he was hibernating and prepared to become a king. Not long ago, as soon as he woke up, he triggered the Extinction King Tribulation and soared up. But this tribulation didn't change Lin Sun's situation. What made Lin Sun most helpless and moved was that Little Silver had the hope to leave Styx River, but this little guy chose to stay with him without hesitation. How could Lin Sun not be moved? But compared with being moved, in fact, he would rather Little Silver leave. The king medicine has been used up, and there are only 4 divine medicines left. If it goes on like this, there will be no more energy for cultivation in less than 3 months. Lin Sun frowned. Although his strength had changed by leaps and bounds in the past 4 years, his digestion was also great. Especially in this Styx River, he couldn't absorb any spiritual chi at all, and could only rely on the divine medicine and king medicine he collected. If even these cultivation resources were exhausted, his situation would definitely not be optimistic. I have to change it. Chapter 1257. Lin Sun's peerless way was unprecedented. Even when he broke through to the peerless king realm, he took the initiative to trigger heaven's retribution. Therefore, his retribution was different from other peerless kings. In the past 2 years, Lin Sun was not waiting for the heaven's retribution, but for an opportunity to prove his Tao. Unfortunately, this opportunity had never come. But now, Lin Sun didn't intend to wait any longer. However, when Lin Sun got up from the ground and looked at the dim yellow lamp of no blame, he suddenly realized a problem, as if he was struck by lightning. This lamp had opened up a small world for him in the past few years, protecting him from the attack of a strange power from the Styx River. But this imperceptibly made his Taoist heart dependent on it. He always thought that with this lamp, his life would not be in danger, and he could exhaust all means to find a safe way to escape. But he forgot that the lamp of no blame was just a treasure after all, a worldly possession. When he pinned the hope of ensuring his own safety on worldly possessions, how could he stand on the great way with his own Tao? How could he talk about the opportunity to prove his Tao? This was originally contrary to his pursuit of the Tao. At this moment, Lin Sun seemed to be enlightened, as if a shackle and barrier in his heart had been broken, and he was completely enlightened. If he wanted to prove his Tao, he should prove it with his own body. Lin Sun suddenly raised his head and looked at the dark river outside the dim yellow shadow of the lamp, where horror and danger were everywhere. But now, Lin Sun had no fear. Boom! He stepped resolutely and rushed out of the shadow of the lamp. In an instant, cold, violent, and terrifying thoughts swept over. The dark river suddenly boiled, as if thousands of demons and ghosts had awakened and fixed their eyes on him from a distance. Lin Sun's body, heart, and soul all throbbed, and his breath almost stopped. He felt an unprecedented great horror and danger. In just a moment, Lin Sun could clearly feel the shadow of death shrouding him. However, in his deep black eyes, there was a fierce fighting intent, which was a kind of disdainful, confident, and invincible will. It was a kind of indomitable spirit, a spirit of bravery and vigor. Fight! In his heart, it was as if a god or demon was shouting. After 4 years of tempering, Lin Sun released all the power in his body at will at this moment, reaching an unprecedented extreme. Rumble, his entire person was like a bottomless abyss at the bottom of a river, boundlessly vast and immeasurably deep. Water, fire, true dragon, undying Tai Chi. All sorts of energies surged into appearance within the abyss, and they flowed with peerlessly gorgeous and vast, brilliant light of the Tao. In that instant, it was as if a god had been born at the bottom of the Nether River. The underworld river was boundless. Its source was unknown, and its end was unknown. Scarlet blood surged, and it was filled with a strange and inauspicious aura. However, today was different from the past. A thick layer of black clouds had suddenly appeared in the sky and covered the sky above the Nether River. A vast and oppressive aura of calamity spread out along with it. The power caused the blood Nether River to become restless and rumble. In next to no time, more and more dark clouds gathered and completely covered the sky, causing this expanse of the heavens and the earth to fall into deep darkness, and it was oppressive to the point it was suffocating. This was a heavenly tribulation that was about to descend. Crack! All of a sudden, a silver arc flashed in the depths of the clouds. It was like a sharp, long knife, dazzling and incomparably bright, showing the aura of destroying the world. In the Nether River, the strange power began to feel fear and panic. At this moment, no one knew how many remnant thoughts of the ancient times began to flee in panic. The heavenly tribulation represented the will of God. How could it allow evil spirits to live? Boom! The sound of thunder began to resound in the depths of the clouds. It was as dull as the war drums played by Thor, soul-stirring and stirring in all directions. Under the Nether River, there was a burst of blood-curdling screams, like the frightened cries of ghosts and ferocious spirits. This scarlet underworld river seemed to be boiling, exploding. Waves surged, the tide swept into the sky, extremely turbulent. Under the Nether River, Lin Sun was bathed in the bright light of the Tao. He suddenly raised his head and murmured, "My tribulation is coming." Before his voice died away, he had already rushed up violently. The lamp of no blame also left with him. Whoosh! Above the Nether River, a bright figure swept out. He stood under the thick black clouds with his hands behind his back. His clothes were fluttering, and his black hair was dancing wildly. After being trapped for 4 years, he triggered an opportunity to prove Tao and reappeared in the world. However, Lin Sun had no time to be excited and sigh with emotion, because the tribulation of immortality in front of him was imminent. Boom! In the rolling clouds, the thunder and lightning shook the world, the river boiled, and the void was disordered and almost collapsed. The land was completely covered by the power of heaven. Will it be the 3 tribulations at the same time? Suddenly, Lin Sun's black eyes shrank, and he looked shocked. The 9 tribulations of immortality were divided into 3 disasters and 6 disasters. The so-called 3 disasters were the disaster of the mind, the disaster of the soul, and the disaster of the body. They were aimed at the heart, soul, and body of the practitioner respectively. The 6 disasters referred to the difficulties of 7 emotions, 6 desires, karma, cause and effect, fate, and longevity. Every time a practitioner passed a tribulation, he could advance a realm on the road of immortality, and his life essence and cultivation would also undergo a new transformation. As the saying goes, one tribulation is different from the world, and every step of immortality is difficult. However, Lin Sun didn't expect that the tribulation he had been waiting for would come with 3 tribulations at the same time. In the depths of the clouds, there was silver thunder surging like a silver sword. This tribulation thunder was called the mind disaster thunder. There was a purple thunder roaring like a purple rainbow. This tribulation thunder was called the soul disaster thunder. There was a red thunder rolling like a furnace. This tribulation thunder was called the body disaster thunder. In this way, it could be concluded that the three tribulations appeared at the same time at this moment. I was worried that I had delayed a lot of time to advance in the past 4 years. I didn't expect that it would come to me voluntarily now. After calming down, Lin Sun smiled with a kind of invisible arrogance. Boom! As if it was irritated by Lin Sun's words, there was a silver mind disaster thunder as thick as a house in the depths of the clouds. Following that, the purple soul thunder and the red body calamity thunder burst forth. The heavens and the earth seemed to be unable to endure the slaughter of such might of the heavens, and it suddenly rumbled and fell into disorder like a crumpled piece of paper. Lin Sun didn't dodge, but rushed up. His state of mind, soul, and body were attacked by different kinds of tribulations in an instant. In his state of mind, there were demons in chaos. Inside his soul, there were thousands of blades tearing. On his body, there were arrows shooting at him. In just a moment, Lin Sun's skin burst into pieces inch by inch. Blood flowed, and his state of mind cracked like a mirror. And his soul was like a lamp that was about to be extinguished in the wind. How could the power of the three tribulations be ordinary? Now, they acted on Lin Sun's body, mind, and soul at the same time. That kind of blow brought him to the brink of death in an instant. Illusion, pain, and dizziness flooded his whole body, making Lin Sun couldn't help roaring like a beast. Most of his peers were afraid of the power of Devil Lin. But who knew the price he had to pay in order to possess such great power? Just like the three tribulations, no one could bear them at all. Moreover, the tribulations for Lin Sun were completely different from those for others. Each of them was peerless. When the three tribulations came together, the threat was absolutely enough to make the world tremble. Break! In the roar, Lin Sun's three Dharma forms of primordial spirit ran the great meditating magic at the same time. His state of mind had long been as firm as a knife, which could cut the sun, moon, ghosts, and gods. It was not comparable to the mirror at all, so it was impossible for it to crack and collapse so easily. As he released his cultivation to the extreme, the killing tribulation was also resolved. In the dazzling lightning, Lin Sun's body was scorched and he was panting. Although he was seriously injured and on the verge of death, he blocked the killing tribulation after all. A divine medicine was swallowed by Lin Sun without hesitation. The profound meaning of immortality, which had already reached the level of Tao, was also activated. In just a few breaths, Lin Sun recovered to his original state. Moreover, his body, heart, and soul had obviously become stronger after the impact and tempering of the thunder tribulation. Boom! In the tribulation cloud, three kinds of thunder tribulation were rolling. Silver, purple, and red intertwined, rendering the world magnificent and colorful, dazzling. Crack! Another thunder tribulation fell from the sky. Vaguely, the sound of killing resounded like the roar of 100,000 celestial soldiers charging. Undoubtedly, the thunder tribulation had become stronger. However, Lin Sun was no longer afraid. He took a deep breath, and his whole body was glittering and flowing with the light of Tao. His whole body was like a surging volcano, releasing all his strength. Rumble. Soon, he encountered danger again. His tendons and bones were broken, and his soul and state of mind were on the verge of collapse. This thunder tribulation was extraordinarily heaven-defying and abnormal. Even if it was seen by other Peerless King Realm experts, they probably couldn't believe that there was such a terrifying tribulation in the world. All of this was because the path Lin Sun took was different from the ancient times, different from the world, and extraordinary. It was a path that only belonged to him. Therefore, the tribulation he faced was destined to be completely different. This time, Lin Sun only recovered half of his injuries before he faced the third thunder tribulation. No matter how hard he tried, he was almost obliterated in the end. His whole body was struck into the Styx River, and his body, soul, and state of mind were on the verge of collapse. The pain had already transformed into numbness. At this moment, he'd become indifferent and forgotten about life and death. In Lin Sun's heart, only an unyielding will was supporting him. In the following period of time, the might of the thunder tribulation grew more and more terrifying, and the hardships and blows Lin Sun suffered grew more and more severe. But from the beginning until the end, he'd never given up. Even if his body, heart, and soul were obliterated in the end, he still intended to fight until the end. Bang! After an unknown period of time, where he survived another thunder tribulation with great difficulty, Lin Sun's body had collapsed completely, and his three soul forms had dimmed and split apart.